Who do we have first? And we're limiting this to 3 minutes, please. If you have any materials to present, I would suggest sending them to council members because we don't have time to display them. Those who have already sent materials can be displayed, but we'll probably have another take at this next week. And so we could bring those materials up at that time. And so, Mr. Lucas, who do we have first?
Yes, and before we get in, I'll just remind members of the public, if you'd like to comment, you can use the raise hand function, which again, depending on your device, may be at in your control panel at the bottom of your screen. Some folks may need to click the participants button and bring up the sidebar and find the raise hand option there. And if all that fails, please just send a message in chat to let us know that you'd like to comment. First up, I believe we have Ramsey Herrick, and I'm going to call on folks by the screen name you're using, so I apologize if that's not your actual name or if I mispronounce anyone's name. But first up is Ramsey Herrick, who should now be able to unmute.
Mr. Herrick, you have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Ramsey Herrick, and I live in the Near East neighborhood, which is diverse, welcoming, and dense already. By now, the positions are clear. On the one hand, we have vague and unsubstantiated assertions that conducting this experiment upon Bloomington's neighborhoods will create an urban renter's paradise for hypothetical future climate refugees. On the other hand, we have the actual residents of those neighborhoods who, by large majorities, reject this experiment because they understand all too well what it will mean for their communities and for Bloomington. How to choose? How to choose? It seems to me that two decision-making principles should hold, in this case and always. The first is that council members should always represent the will and interests of their constituents, not run irreversible experiments upon them. Nor should council members use their positions to pursue private ideological crusades. The second principle is the principle of prudence. If there is a well-documented chance that this scheme will do more harm than good, council members should vote to protect Bloomington from that harm. If democracy still means anything in this town, this deeply unpopular scheme to sell off our neighborhoods to outside interests must be defeated. And please do not fall for the conditional use tactic in actual practice. As we know the conditional use is in effect the same as by right, as Ms. Scanlon just all but admitted. Bloomington is a special place. Let's not wreck it with unproven, ill-advised, and absolutely unnecessary emergency measures. We're not in an emergency, and we shouldn't ask in desperation. Please vote yes on Amendment 1. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comment.
Next up is Martha, who should be able to unmute. And I neglected to mention this at the beginning. When we get to 30 seconds left in the comments, I'll raise my hand to give folks a warning. And then when your 3 minutes are up, I will give you the time up signal. So Martha is now unmuted and should be ready to comment.
Please say your full name, Martha.
Thank you. I am Martha Harsani, Harsanii. I have been a resident of Elm Heights for 45 years. I support affordability, sustainability, and diversity in our housing. I do not believe taxes will promote any of these values in our neighborhood. First-time buyers looking for affordable older homes will be outbid by developers looking to duplex these properties to increase their revenues. So much for affordability. Some housing may be torn down to build even larger plexes. So much for sustainability. And plexes, at least in my near campus neighborhood, will appeal mainly to students. So much for diversity. And therefore, I support Amendment 1, removing plexes from R1, R2, and R3. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comment.
Next up is the screen name Edie Bernstein, I'm assuming. who should be able to unmute.
It's it. Can you hear me now? Yes. Yeah, it's Ed Bernstein. First of all,
Mr. Bernstein, we're hearing an echo, so if you have another device on that's broadcasting this, that might be the problem. Thank you.
Yeah, we do have a. Wendy, turn off your sound. Okay. Wendy, turn your sound.
Sorry, any advice how I turn them off?
God bless it. Can I start? Can you hear me?
Yes, but you still have a terrible echo and feedback, so
Okay,
perhaps you could turn off your device.
My name's Ed Bernstein.
That's
I live
better.
in Elm Heights. I want to thank you and many apologies to the council for having to deal with this onerous and critical task. I do support Amendment 1. I want to reiterate my opposition to plexus in the core neighborhoods as a misguided solution to density and affordable housing. I want to illustrate this with a salient example on my street, which already has the diversity of housing types and residents that you are wishing for: apartments, duplexes, rentals, ADUs, even Airbnbs and private houses. There was a small stone cottage on my street that became empty. A sign went up for sale. It was then gutted and bought by a contractor who added a second story and began renovating it. He wanted to sell it to a family, but a local landlord presented a lot of cash and a very attractive price. He sold it, and the landlord is finishing it up and will rent it to 3 to 5 well-off students, as he has done in the past at a very, very high rate. This is just another example of a small dwelling that a family could have afforded to buy, purchased by yet another landlord for student rentals. This has been and will continue to be the trend in Elm Heights and other core neighborhoods. It is all too common event, and with the addition of newly constructed plexes will indeed destroy the core neighborhoods and create a Bloomington that none of us wants to live in, with no diversity, no equity, and no affordable anything. Thank you so much. Sorry for the echo.
Thank you, Mr. Bernstein.
Next up is Lori Hovener. And I will also remind folks, if you have 2 or more individuals on the same device that would like to comment, please let us know at the beginning of your comments so that we can accommodate you. And I believe Lori is on the same device as Ramsey, and they should be able to comment.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, please state your full name.
My name is Lori Havener, and I'm a resident of Elm Heights.
Thank
I
you.
strongly urge the members of the City Council to vote against allowing duplexes in core neighborhoods and vote in support of Amendment 1. By voting against the construction of duplexes in core neighborhoods, which are already dense and diverse, here is what you're saying both now and in relation to the next election. Number 1, you respect the democratic process. Number 2, you recognize and respect the fact that you are an elected representative and not a community activist. Number 3, you therefore respect the views of your constituents and you don't make the mistake of prioritizing irreversible, abstract, and experimental policies above their concerns and lived experiences. Number 4, you respect the comprehensive growth policies plan that clearly dictates policy on this issue in at least 6 locations within the document. Number 5, you respect the leaders who have gone before you, such as former Mayor Tommy Allison and Councilwoman Charlotte Zitlow, both of whom have argued vehemently against allowing plexes based on their lived experience. You also respect the League of Women Voters and the fact that they too are strongly opposed to plexes in core neighborhoods. And finally, number 6, your wish is to reset this administration's divisive, autocratic tone and restore a more inclusive tone to policy making. Your vote against the plexes is truly a vote for participatory democracy and local control in Bloomington. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
Next up is Brad Whistler. And
Welcome, Mr. Whistler.
to unmute.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Sorry, it just started raining very loudly here. I'm Brad Whistler. I'm the president of the City Plan Commission. The Plan Commission recently spent several weeks taking input and discussing these changes to the UDO that are before you now. We made a few changes to the staff's original presentation, and these were not unanimous decisions, but they were consistent decisions. We considered a number of amendments that would either further restrict plexes or make them more accessible. And in every case, after lots of public input and deliberation, the Plan Commission voted to make them more accessible. We need more housing in Bloomington. Almost no one denies that. And absolutely no one who is actively shopping for housing, either to rent or to buy, denies that. The idea that we have enough of any kind of housing is just not supported by the evidence. Some people have said that we have enough housing, or at least that we have enough rental housing. And then on the other hand, say that the demand is so strong that landlords are going to come scoop up every house that goes on the market. But you really can't have it both ways. The reason that there is so much interest in Bloomington real estate is that the demand for housing, both for rent and for sale, just dramatically outpaces the supply. And this is the reason why housing is unaffordable in Bloomington. The crisis is real, it's well researched, it's well documented. And so the question before us is, if we're going to add more housing, what does that housing look like? Where does it go? And you'll hear lots of people argue that, yes, we need more housing, but it shouldn't be in the core neighborhoods. It should be on the outskirts or on the arterials. But there are two problems with this position. First, it flies in the face of sustainability because when housing is located farther away from the city center and from stores and restaurants and parks and other amenities, it increases vehicle miles traveled. It increases dependency on vehicles, increases congestion. And furthermore, it's just segregationist. If we say it's fine for people to live in duplexes, but the people who live in duplexes need to live somewhere else, we're not only protecting the segregation that currently exists, but we're relegating the duplex class to new blocks of isolation in our city and further restricting access to opportunity. Secondly, it really flies in the face of affordability. Even if a duplex is built and it's offered at a price that's below the average price in Bloomington, the savings that might be achieved in rent or mortgage payments are offset by increases in travel costs if it's located on the outskirts. It's also less affordable for city government because when population sprawls, the cost of providing services goes up. More miles of sewer pipe, wider roads, more traffic signals, and more ground for fire and police to cover. So the only responsible way for us to increase housing is to encourage more housing to be built closer to the urban core.
Mr. Whistler, you have 30 seconds.
The only way to do that responsibly is by not just allowing, but encouraging integrated housing in existing neighborhoods. This will create a beautiful opportunity for people of differing incomes, backgrounds, and stations in life to live together and access the same opportunities. This is going to be a hard decision. It was a very hard decision for Plan Commission, but I just urge you all to see that we have a mandate not just to represent specific constituencies, but to do what's best for the city's future. And I hope that you'll vote to affirm what Plan Commission did and not reverse those amendments. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Mr. Lucas?
Yes, and I had a request to give folks a warning by reading the next 5 names just so that they know who's up next. Next up, we're going to have Nathan Geiger, followed by Patricia Foster, Libby Benson, C. Trasinka, and apologies for the mispronunciation, and then Carrie Thompson. So Nathan Geiger is up next and should be able to unmute.
Welcome, Mr. Geiger.
Hello. Thank you. And thanks for all the, as well as the Planning Commission, who's been doing so much work on this. I am a neighborhood resident and a first-time homeowner, recent first-time home buyer in the last few years in the Bryan Park neighborhood. And I would like to say that I oppose Amendment 1 and that I'm a little concerned about some of the rhetoric that's going around here that some folks are saying, oh, we've listened to, our constituents and our constituents are against duplexes. Well, I'm not sure how broadly the constituent base that you're listening to is, because most of the folks that I know, most people in their 30s and 40s, young people who are the future of Bloomington, many of which are first-time home buyers or people that can't afford to buy starting families. These will be people that are super excited about these duplexes. These are people that are starting families, people like us, for example, that, might want to own a duplex and maybe rent out the other half of it to another, set of a couple of young adults or something else of that nature who can't afford to buy a house. And so this is really something that if you listen to the younger folks in this community, most of us are by and large in support of, allowing duplexes. And we're in support of these changes because these reflect the reality of the situation we live in today. I think it's interesting that a lot of the people, here that are talking about affordability and buying a home are people that, maybe haven't bought a home in 30 years. And I would just urge you to listen to those of us who are, have been on the housing market, who have been on the rental market recently here and what it's actually like. I think that, by listening to a broader constituency, you can really learn a lot about what people in Bloomington need. So I urge you to strike down this amendment and to support duplexes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Geiger.
Next up is Patricia Foster.
Welcome, Ms. Foster.
Thank you very much. My name is Patricia Foster and I live in Elm Heights. As we've been discussing, it seems everyone believes the major justification for increasing density is because of the high cost of housing, and that's because there are not enough units being built. Although apparently we disagree on the exact number, many thousands of multi-family units have been added to Bloomington in the last 3 years, and another 500 or so are currently in the planning stage. And all of this has not solved our housing problem. Why not? Because they're targeted to students and because that's what developers want to build. That's not going to change. I've been reading trade journals and the Wall Street Journal, and I can tell you that housing is incredibly increasing all over the country. It's not a Bloomington problem. And big investors are moving in. Specifically, buying to rent is currently being promoted by financial institutions. And even in Bloomington, investors are already paying cash to buy houses and then reselling them. Student housing is a particularly hot market. It offers investors a stable, high revenue producing investment, and the rental population turns over frequently, so rents can be increased frequently. IU is in the Big Ten, as we all know, and schools with ranked sports teams are more attractive to developers, so Bloomington is a target. Many students want to live not in large apartment buildings, but in conventional housing and are willing to pay high rents to do so, especially when these units are close to campus. It's not the students' fault that rents are high. They're being exploited. Developers are buying houses to convert to rentals will drive housing prices up. Rent by room makes converting houses to student rentals more profitable. That drives housing prices up. Duplexes will be even more attractive to investors because 6 rooms can be rented individually. That drives housing costs up and rental costs up. And as I say again, it's not the students' fault. They're as much victim as the rest of us who, when the housing prices go up so much. Buying duplexes will not solve these problems. It will make them worse. It will open up more options for investors to build duplexes to rent or to convert single-family houses into duplexes to rent. The spread of rentals in the core neighborhoods removes from the market housing that could be purchased by middle-income people. Homeowners deserve to be protected. They have invested in their homes on the assumption of a stable, family-friendly neighborhood. So I urge you to please vote yes on Amendment 1. Working together, we can figure out how to increase housing options without irreversibly harming our core neighborhoods. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
Next up is Libby Benson.
Welcome, Ms. Benson.
Hi, everyone. I'm Libby Benson, a resident and graduate student living in the Bryant Park neighborhood. First, I'd like to thank all of the city council members and members of the Planning Commission for your work on this issue. I'm going to keep it short and just say that I believe in inclusivity, density, and affordable housing, and thus I support adding duplexes as an additional housing option throughout Bloomington. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
Next up is C. Trasinka. And they should now be able to unmute.
Welcome. You have 3
welcome.
minutes.
Thank you. I'm Charles Trasinka. I live on First Street. We spent the past 10 years restoring a historic house on First Street. This allowing plexes and duplexes, multiplexes, but certainly duplexes as single family housing is not an incremental change. So I strongly support Amendment 1. And I particularly like the language Councilman Rollo introduced, where you said it was a massive experiment affecting all neighborhoods and opens the door to developers to compete with homeowners for student housing. I went to dinner with a couple of those developers who outlined the details of this, and I can tell you the money's there. The fact is that Bloomington today is viewed by these guys, and they're in the business of doing this around many universities, not just us. And they actually knew a lot about, well, they know a lot about Bloomington, and the money's there. There's no question that it's not going to make it more affordable. It's going to make it more expensive, particularly at the current interest rates. And so I'm strongly in favor of Amendment 1. But frankly, if you guys pass this UDL, I'm a finance professor. There's money there. I'm going to become an evil capitalist. I might be developing things. So please don't do it. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your comment.
Next up is Carrie Thompson.
Good evening, and thank you, planning staff and council members, for your careful consideration of these important changes. I've been an advocate for affordable housing for nearly three decades. In addition to leading our local chapter of Habitat for Humanity, I helped found what is now the South Central Housing Network. I served on the steering committee for the city's comprehensive plan, as well as the task force which examined the feasibility of inclusionary zoning about 8 years ago. And I'm here tonight to ask you to vote to support Amendment 1. While it was stated earlier tonight that this amendment is not seeking to serve the affordable market, it's important for the public to understand that it is likely to harm access to affordable housing, which would be a significant negative impact on our city. The amendment to defeat by right duplexes will support the elimination of what would be a significant negative impact on our city. By right duplexes amounts to exclusionary zoning, and here's why. In a housing economy where properties close to the university merit rents of nearly double that of what a property just miles away obtains, we are virtually guaranteed to see significant conversions of single-family homes into duplexed units, thus pushing out middle-income families and ensuring that only the very rich inhabit the city's center. Already, rents vary drastically throughout the city. $700 a bedroom within a mile of campus is average, while just 1.5 miles away from campus, rents drop to nearly half of that, averaging just $375 per bedroom. Doubling the number of units in a near campus home will simply double the income for the owner. Minneapolis, the first major city to eliminate single-family zoning, has now had the time to do a study published in the American Planning Association this year on the impact of this change on affordability. And unfortunately, the change has headed in the opposite direction intended. Properties, especially those which were lower income, have risen in cost. In Bloomington, a city that touts its care for those in need, where in fact the last 3 mayoral elections were run on a platform of needing more affordable housing, where is the social justice in a plan set to exclude the very people who need housing the most? Several have argued that this is an experiment. It is a dangerous one. Once we offer, without cost or obligation to serve our community, the opportunity to create 2 high-income rentals out of 1.
Ms. Thompson, your time has expired.
Okay.
Just conclude your sentence.
Yeah, I just urge you to vote yes on number 1. We're going to have a hard time steering away from this. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Mr. Lucas.
Yes, the next 5 speakers we'll have are Daniel Bingham, Mary Morgan, Paul Ash, Ann Birch, and Cynthia. And first up, which is Daniel Bingham, who should be able to unmute.
Welcome, Mr. Bingham.
Thanks. I couldn't help but recalling, as the 3 council members who proposed Amendment 1 were proposing it, that 2 of them, as they are professing their support for ADUs, that the 2 who were actually on council at the time as ADUs passed, voted against them. Dave Rollo and Susan Sambury. I went and double checked my memory because I was caught off guard by how vociferously they were claiming to support ADUs. Both voted against ADUs when that passed a couple of years ago. And if I recall, they used the exact same arguments they now apply to duplexes. So now that ADUs are passed, those arguments no longer apply. ADUs are appropriate density for our neighborhoods. But at the time, all the same fears existed around them. I just couldn't let that go without calling it out. The history of single family zoning is a history of racism. It was invented by developers to increase property values and their housing developments and keep out people of color. There are numerous articles about this. It was invented around the same time that racial covenants were being banned, that explicitly racial zoning was being banned. And there are studies that still show today that it is still having that same effect, even if we don't intend it to. There are studies that show that when neighborhoods are upzoned and when plexes and denser forms of housing are introduced, they diversify. Minneapolis is not the only, I'd be very interested to see that Minneapolis study. I tried to find it in the few minutes since it was mentioned, but they're not the only ones who've applied a lot of upzoning to try to affect affordability. Many other cities have. There is definitely a catch-up period because we have not been building enough housing for decades, but eventually they've seen rents come down. It does impact affordability. But as important as the racial aspects, as important as the affordability aspects are the climate aspects. Our density is just lower carbon by a huge amount. Single family zoning is not sustainable, and we desperately need to build a sustainable city for the future. There is definitely an unavoidable generation gap in this issue where people of my generation, 20s, 30s, early 40s, starting young families, raising families, largely support this change because we know we need it on many levels. Folks of my parents' generation who are comfortably ensconced in neighborhoods like Elm Heights, which, by the way, I grew up in Elm Heights. And Elm Heights is not affordable. It wasn't when I grew up. It's not now. I went back and looked at my old block. The average housing price on that block is around $500,000 per house. I saw a handful that were around $300,000 and none that were less than that. That's not affordable. And if you're comfortably ensconced in that neighborhood, then you're not experiencing this struggle of trying to get housing. You've already got your housing. You're already building your wealth. We need you to be willing to accept a little bit of change around you so that the next generation has a chance. Because all of the changes we need for climate change are going to mean your habits have to change. The way you get around, the way the city's developed, the way we get our energy. Change is coming. And if you're unwilling to change, you're only hurting your kids and their kids, your grandkids, the next generation. So please, I urge you, do not support Amendment 1. Yes, we're gonna have to take some policy risks. No, we're not gonna be able to know the outcomes of every policy risk we take. The body of research so far suggests that this change is positive.
Mr. Chair.
No, it's not the only thing.
I wanted to call attention. I think we've exceeded time limit a bit. I didn't want to overstep, but if.
Thank you. I did. I lost Mr. Lucas. I'm sorry, your time's expired, Mr. Bingham. Thank you, though.
Next up is Mary Morgan.
Thank you, Council. I'm Mary Morgan, Director of Advocacy and Public Policy with the Greater Bloomington Chamber of Commerce. I'm a renter, and I'm speaking on behalf of the Chamber in support of providing more housing options in Bloomington. Aside from student housing, the shortage is acute. Housing is one of the top issues for many local businesses in recruiting and retaining the employees they need, and I hope you'll keep that constituency in mind as you deliberate in addition to the residents of Elm Heights. A housing shortage is a reality in our community, as you know. So it's been surprising that some people dispute that a housing shortage does exist. We see an emerging distrust of data, which should be concerning to everyone. The chamber advocated strongly for the city to do a housing study so that policymakers would have good data to use making decisions. And we appreciate that the city undertook that project. Now, however, you'll hear some people call the city's study into question and say that, in fact, more than 4,000 units have been built since 2018. I've looked at the chart on which that data, on which those numbers are based, and the data is flawed in several ways. So I hope you'll be skeptical when you hear people referencing that number. We do think it should be easier for the general public to find underlying data on housing approvals and building permits through the city's Be Clear data portal and the Monroe County Building Department. We also support a broader conversation about housing in Bloomington, Ellettsville, and throughout Monroe County. And I hope that you'll be, that's something that you would pursue. But we don't believe data collection should be used as a delaying tactic when the housing crisis is so clear and so well documented. We urge you and the city administration to address the community's serious housing needs responsibly, but with the urgency it demands. The need is here, the housing is not. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
Next up is Paul Ash.
Welcome.
Hello, this is Elizabeth Cox Ash, and I want to speak about the affordable housing issue. I wear many hats. One of the hats I wear is I have been on BRI's, Bloomington Restorations, Inc., the Affordable Housing Committee since 1998 when we started. We are being outbid by projects when we try to bid on these because outside investors are buying them up. They have additional access to money that we do not. So we are not able to expand our affordable housing program because we are being outbid, number one. Number two, I'm looking at the HT paper, and they refer to building permits from 2003 to 2008 and after 2008, and the drop is 45%. And they're commenting about this. What happened? 2008 was the Dodd-Frank Act. Dodd-Frank Act limited homeowners on what could be allowed for financing of homes, duplexes, etc., ADUs. So fewer people are allowed to finance these projects. However, developers can afford these things. By the way, I support Amendment 1. We do need to stop this additional plexes because this is going to have the outside developers. They can take the additional risks. And right now, the bundling that occurred in 2008 with homeowners that caused the crash that caused all of us to have to bail out the banks are still there for commercial. And commercial, there's going to be a bailout down the road. We as homeowners, we as constituents are going to be asked to have to pay for that down the road. Number one. Number two, the whole thing with...
You have 30 seconds, Ms. Cox Ash. Thank you.
Okay. I have also worked for the election systems. And the last elections, I saw at least 1,000 or more people in line, 2 blocks or more, the entire 30 days prior to the elections. All of you are up for votes down the road, 2 years. Same with the mayor. You have to answer to us, poor little people who you don't want to listen to.
Ms. Cox Ash, your time's expired.
So
Thank you for your comments.
Okay.
Good evening. Mr. Lucas?
You think I-
Next up is Ann Birch.
Welcome.
Thank you. I represent the League of Women Voters of Bloomington, Monroe County, and I do need to clarify a remark that was made earlier. The League does not take a position for or against plexes in core neighborhoods. However, the League has expressed strong concerns to city officials and Planning Commission members about the way in which changes in zoning have been developed and proposed. We still believe the city needs to pause this process. I'll just mention 3 of the issues. Although citizens have been given an opportunity to voice their concerns in public hearings, many of those concerns have not been publicly addressed with supporting resources, such that the citizens can go up on a website and see information for themselves. A second point is there are no Plan Commission minutes on their webpage and no clear way for the public to access records of commission meetings, especially if they come into this issue late, or resource material on this complicated issue. And third, several times in meetings and in public statements, it's been said, in effect, we should go ahead with this, and if the revisions don't work out, the UDO can always be changed. What we are going through right now is evidence that change to the UDO is not easy. In addition, when a zoning change is this contentious, the city needs to seriously consider citizen concerns and be confident of its decision instead of planning on moving ahead with it and seeing whether or not it works out. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Birch.
Next up is Cynthia.
Welcome, Cynthia. Could you please state your full name?
Thank you, Cynthia Brettheim.
Welcome.
I'm so sorry that we're here talking about this again. We have shown up through the CMP, through the transportation plan, and through the UDO discussions last year. We have been honest in looking at data. We've been honest in conducting further studies in vacancy and occupancy. We've been really vigilant to protect the things that make Bloomington the precious place that it is to live. And our realtors and developers help that happen. But the real problem is not whether developers and realtors can continue to make as much money as they did pre-COVID and in the last 4 years of a stunning climb in inequity. Please use council time and citizen focus to focus on the problems that are real, that we need to change, that are more serious, like homelessness. Or as another public comment mentioned, the 36% of Bloomington residents living below the poverty line. The idea of offering a tax incentive to developers is more of an effort to further increase inequity. Please approve Amendment 1. Please listen to citizens. We have nothing to gain by making more divisive groups here in Bloomington. We have the sweet things and advantages of living in a small Midwestern town with fantastic possibilities and a magnificent diversity in housing, especially in the core neighborhoods of single family housing, duplexes, triplexes, fourplexes, and multi-level apartments we already have here. Please focus on the real issues. Please follow your constituents' requests. We're still showing up in vast numbers compared to those against the core neighborhoods or against and protecting single family housing so that new people coming on can buy their first fixer-uppers. Support them. Support us. Thank you very much. Please support Amendment 1. I hope I never have to talk about this again. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Brettheim.
Our next group of 5 will be Sarah Murray, Orion Day, Michael Horsley, Jess, and then Jack and Bo. And first up is Sarah Murray.
Welcome.
Should now be to unmute.
You have 3 minutes.
Hello, thank you. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak this evening. I live in Prospect Hill currently. I've lived here for about 1.5 years. I've lived in Bloomington for almost 4 years. I come from Michigan and I have an urban planning degree. So this topic of conversation is of particular interest to me. My research and work has a lot to do with environmentalism. So I am actively in support of any housing initiatives that increase density, because ultimately greater density is better for the environment. I feel like the members of the council are very educated, so I don't need to go into the reasons in terms of why greater density is better for the environment in terms of carbon footprint, transportation needs, resources used, et cetera, et cetera. I am generally in favor of the new planning ordinance. I am significantly in favor of greater density in the city of Bloomington. Like I mentioned, I have a graduate degree. My husband has a graduate degree. We both make decent wages. We could barely afford to buy in the city of Bloomington. And that was a priority that was meaningful and important to us. We are literally the staple example of who you want in your community, and we could barely afford to be here. So my hesitancy though is that I feel like there are loopholes in this ordinance. I wish there were better securities for affordable housing. My concern is that greater density is going to turn into greater development firms seeking renters. I'm pretty stuck in terms of how I feel about this. I very much support greater density. I don't know that this is the best way to go about it. I feel like this is the better way to go about it than in terms of the faux luxury loft apartments that we are seeing springing up on every corner downtown. I think there are very, very solid design standards in place in the neighborhoods where we can still preserve the.
Sorry, your time is up, Ms. Marie.
Sure, thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
Next up is Orion Day.
Welcome.
Hello, I'm Orion Day, and I am currently couch surfing in the Bryant Park neighborhood because even with a full-time professional staff position at Indiana University, I was not able to afford housing in this city where I could live my day-to-day life without multiple bus transfers, many hours of waiting for buses, having to leave for work at 6 o'clock to arrive at 8 o'clock because it would require multiple transfers. So my options have been extremely limited in this town for some time now. I am not a student. Professional staff wages are kind of surprisingly low. $40,000 is the most I've ever made, but the best I could do was a relatively dumpy apartment. Parking passes are almost $500 for where my job was. And so driving wasn't exactly an option for me, nor was it something I want to do when I consider my involvement with sustainability organizations and my commitment to a sustainable future if we want to have a civilization, let alone a city as lovely as Bloomington. So the only places affordable to me would have been on the outskirts of town, which is a lifestyle that just doesn't work for someone who can't drive and would require multiple buses per day. I see duplexes and other plexes as a small incremental step in increasing density, as others have said, a small incremental step of building up more varied housing options for people like myself who are stuck in this middle. We need these missing middle options. I am not in a place where I'm even considering home ownership, while also not really wanting to live in giant apartment complexes, either downtown with students or on the edge of town, where my only option would be to drive to do everything in my life. We need this missing middle, which is provided by plexes. There has to be a compromise position. I absolutely share your concerns for outside developers. I don't want to see real estate speculation. I don't want to see housing prices continue to go up and up and up. So there has to be an option that isn't just simply no to duplexes, because that isn't a future that acknowledges the realities of the world that we live in. Because development is going to happen. That has been the history of human civilization ever since there have been cities. So the option is either to say, how can we work with that inevitability to make it affordable and equitable and sustainable, or to simply stand in the way and allow it to happen anyway, where the outside developers come in and take advantage of the situation as it stands today. So I ask you to vote no and allow duplexes by right in our city to provide the missing middle to people like me.
Thank you for your
time.
Next up is Michael Horsley.
Welcome, Mr. Horsley.
Hi, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, great. First of all, thank you all for your time and your consideration and listening. I really appreciate the council members, at least, voicing concerns about affordability, and I really appreciate all of the previous citizens for the immense amount of research that they did. This is my first time coming to one of these things or participating, and so I don't have anything super prepared, but I want to somewhat echo the previous speaker in that I'm a 37-year-old professional staff member at IU. I have a job that I consider to be a good job. However, when you look at the median wage in Bloomington currently is $34,000 a year, and 64% of our town makes $50,000 or less. And then you look at the property value, median 182, but 52% of the properties in Bloomington are in the 200,000 plus range. There's a disconnect there. Nobody that lives here and works here and provides a service here and keeps the town running can actually afford to live here. Are duplexes going to be the answer? I don't know, but we have to, the bigger issue, I think, is that we have all of this, and it's not the students' fault. I'm not blaming the students. I was a student, but we have all of this East Coast money that comes in, and to them, $1,000 a month on an apartment is absolutely nothing. It's chump change. And so the prices of housing here, we are all living on 1990s Midwest wages while being expected to, our cost of living is rivaling places like Portland, Oregon, or Seattle, Washington. I have friends in Chicago who, when I tell them what I'm paying for my place and I rent, they're like, oh my God, that's what I pay. And they live in Chicago.
You have 30 seconds, Mr. Horsley. Thank you.
There has to be a solution. I don't know if bringing in duplexes is the solution. I agree that more affordable housing, more housing, we need more supply is definitely the answer, but there have to be safeguards to prevent these big investment companies and corporations. There are already I mean, you look at the housing here, there are like 10 corporations that own all of Bloomington, and they can charge whatever they want.
Mr. Horsley, your time's expired.
Thank you, sorry.
Thank you for your comment. Really appreciate it. Mr. Lucas?
Yes, next up is Jess. And they should now be able to unmute.
Jess, could you please state your full name? Thank you.
Yeah, my name is Jessica Griffin. Been a Bloomington resident for 12 years. I was very excited to see the new climate action plan that came out recently and all of its recommendations for walkable and sustainable communities. So thank you, Council, for your work on that plan. And I hope that you'll follow through with action by voting no on Amendment 1. I've lived in what people refer to as core neighborhoods for 9 years, mostly in the types of housing that's called missing middle housing, duplexes and small apartments. Smaller homes and more people means proximity to amenities. I got rid of my car 9 years ago after realizing the benefits of living in the walkable areas of Bloomington. And since pedestrians and cyclists outspend drivers on local businesses, inviting more neighbors will go a long way towards getting to the 16 units per acre that we need to open up closed storefronts and to support more public transit service. Currently, core neighborhoods average 8 dwelling units per acre. That's half of what we need. Do the people here commenting against plexes, but who own plexes, just want to have a monopoly on them? Owning a home doesn't mean that you're purchasing a neighborhood preserved in amber. There have been a lot of public meetings where we hear people speak out against super tall apartment buildings being built, and for a lot of good reasons, but currently that's all we really allow for the most part. Outside of downtown, everything is one size fits all, or I guess 2 sizes, either a unit in a pretty big apartment or a luxury detached single family house, which goes for $1,500 a month in my neighborhood, or you can buy a $900 square foot single family home for $300,000 or more. Everything in between is effectively banned. There's demand for walkable and sustainable living in places like duplexes and townhomes, but instead we're stuck mostly with just 1 or 2 options, and the most expensive ones at that. And I'm so tired of seeing friends move out of the city or out of the state because there are no suitable options in Bloomington. How many friends will I have to see continuing to move away because Bloomington isn't making the choice to allow more people to live sustainably? So I asked the council to join the national efforts to end the ban on missing middle housing and end exclusionary zoning by permitting plexes throughout the city, especially where they are needed most in the walkable areas. And I also want to note something too, when I was asking a lot of friends if they could join tonight to make comment, very many of them couldn't because they work in the evenings, they have children, are babysitting, and they're the people most affected by this. And so I hope that council is also considering equal weight to emails and other outreach that they're getting. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
Next up is the screen name Jack and Bo, and they should now be able to unmute.
Welcome.
Okay,
Please state your full name.
Yes, I am Bo Valance. I live in Elm Heights. I oppose the current upzoning plan, and I support Amendment 1. The good neighborhoods in this town were one reason I accepted an offer from IU 15 years ago. I've been fleeing from suburban sprawl and sameness all my life. But here we are in a pandemic where data are skewed, nothing is normal, including city council, where we can't even meet in person and discuss. And city council shouldn't have to decide on this contentious issue this fast with this little public input, with so much opposition and with so many unknowns. What's the rush on this thing? We settled it in 2019. The hurry still seems crazy to me. What's up with this? There seems to be no danger, no risk to stopping this process, waiting until we can meet normally with more data about the local impact of upzoning on communities like Bloomington. There's no danger to delaying this decision. There is great danger to this so-called experiment and going ahead with upzoning now. The results will be irrevocable change that later we could regret forever. Also, realize that all those students and other renters living in larger numbers in plexed houses in our neighborhoods, even if they do ideally walk and bike everywhere, will first have parked their cars somewhere on our streets and alleys. Upzoning will jam our neighborhoods with pay-by-the-room renters who won't have enough parking spots and aren't invested in the town. They might, as did one group in our neighborhood, put out banners saying, "You honk, we drink." Is this what we want in our neighborhoods? So let's stop and think. And for now, say no to plexing, gather the facts, support Amendment 1. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
The next 5 speakers will be Jack Cummings, Wendy Bernstein, Nancy Hutchins, Herb Marks, and Mallory. And first from that bunch, we have Jack Cummings.
Welcome.
Thank you. My name is Jack Cummings. My wife is Marcia Campbell. We live at 720 Ballantyne, which is on First Street in Ballantyne, 2 blocks south of campus. The vast majority of our neighbors are long-term residents who have lived in their homes for decades and raised children that go to the local schools. Marcia and I are speaking against duplexes and in support of Amendment 1. I guess one question is, will upzoning result in diversity in Elm Heights, specifically, or other areas that are adjacent to IU? This is highly doubtful because the demand for that segment of that area around the campus will be driven by students. And, you know, I'm not against students. When my wife was walking around passing out flyers, she talked with students that were in rental properties and talked about what the effort was to support Amendment 1. And the sentiment that she received was, we like our neighborhood the way it is. You know, we could have moved to a more concentrated area of student rentals. I guess when asked about how many duplex conversions would take place, Ms. Scanlon said too often, I think, or, you know, I believe. So, you know, the point that was made earlier about this being a dangerous experiment, we don't know whether there will be 20, 100, or how extreme the change to the neighborhoods will be. But I will echo the point that parents of out-of-state students that are, their frame of reference is Chicago, New York, or California.
You have 30 seconds, Mr. Cummings.
They're more than willing to pay high rent. So I don't think the prices will result in any decrease. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
Next up is Wendy Bernstein.
Welcome.
I pressed unmute a couple times. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I'm concerned that in the zoning debate, smart people with high ideals are overlooking realities on the ground. If we upzone the core neighborhoods, which students love to live in, as Jack just said, and often party in, then they, their landlords, and property developers will get all the benefits of upzoning, and long-term neighbors' lives will be badly affected. Here's what I see. In Elm Heights, there are modest houses being bought, remodeled to be flipped as single-family homes, but capable of housing students. One higher-priced landlord has bought many such houses and will rent them to students to get the biggest bang for his bucks, which he has lots of, so he can continue to purchase more. Powerful national private student housing developers and their organizations, as Pat Foster said, work with large financial institutions, encouraging even Californian and other big investors to buy up private homes and land to remodel and build plexes in upzoned college areas. Their well-financed operatives may very well be promoting this kind of zoning and are watching for upzoned areas to invest in. There they incentivize local realtors to grab owner-occupied homes as soon as they are listed with a realtor and sell them to developers and landlords before they even go on the market. This happened to a small house right down the street from us in the last week or two. They may be even using the ideas of sustainability and preventing urban sprawl to influence municipalities to help their profits. To me, it is incredibly ironic and tragic for progressives trying to help the underrepresented to fall prey to wealthy power players who undermine their altruistic goals. This is precisely what the comprehensive plan and UDO, which had so much input and support of us neighbors and other concerned citizens, was designed to prevent. Instead of upzoning the core, please do no harm to our venerable and vulnerable old neighborhoods.
You have 30 seconds.
And use federal CARE Acts and the American Rescue Plan funds to provide subsidies for affordable housing for those with incomes below the missing middle, subsidize rents and down payments for those in need, build affordable and workforce housing on available land. Please do no harm to our older neighborhoods and truly stop talking about helping them and help those in need. We can and must do both. Please support Amendment 1.
Thank you, Ms. Bernstein.
Good job.
Next up is Nancy Hutchins.
Welcome, Ms. Hutchins.
Am I unmuted now?
Yes, you are.
I'm Nancy Hutchins. I live on the east side and I've lived in Bloomington for 12 years. And I support Amendment 1. I'm going to try to make this brief since so many people are talking. But to me, the question in front of us is, do we have a democracy in Bloomington? All of us are quick to complain about how tone deaf the state legislature is, but you are not listening to the will of the people. I would like to know what percentage, we've talked here about what your constituents are saying. What are you hearing? You've all had constituent meetings. You are getting tons of emails. What's the percentage? And then why aren't you responding to what people are saying? You know, you did not get a mandate in the last election. It was a low turnout election and there was nothing on we did not talk about this. If this is such a key issue that is going to have such a draconian effect on the quality of our neighborhoods throughout the whole town, I think the least we can do is to do something which really has a much more in-depth community engagement. The other point I want to make is that I was a real estate agent, an award-winning real estate agent in Westchester County, New York. I'm originally from Greene County. I'm not a New Yorker, but I was a Westchester County realtor during the last bubble. And I know what it's like when you have developers breathing down your neck and can smell profits. You have no idea what you are unleashing. I have lived through it. And what everybody else, the finance professor who spoke earlier, is really telling you what it's about. And it's not just local developers. We're really talking about hedge funds, people that are looking, they have logarithms that will pick up all the things we're talking about. They will come in and buy blocks. And there's no reason to think, you may think I'm being draconian. I've seen it happen. I've lived through it. I've made a lot of money as a realtor selling those places. And I also know what happened when all those people were underwater when the crash happened. So we are living through this housing crisis. There are many dimensions to it. I have a lot of family here. And by the way, for those of you who are younger, who think that because we live in these houses, we are unaware of what the housing affordability issue is, that is not true. Most of us have worked on this issue. We have family members that we have been struggling and helping to find housing in Bloomington. And it is a huge issue, but it's a national issue. I will just say, I think our neighborhoods here are special. There's so much to be said for a sustainable family neighborhood, which creates voters. That's the thing. We do not want, to have nothing but transients.
You have 30 seconds.
Okay, that's it. I just support Amendment 1 and I hope you do the right thing and do no harm.
Thank you, Ms. Hutchins. Mr. Lucas.
Next up is Herb Marks.
Welcome, Mr. Marks. You have 3 minutes.
My name's Herb Marks. I live in Elm Heights. I've lived here since 1990 when the increase in density of student rentals on the near north side made that once beautiful neighborhood inhospitable to families. I urge the council to approve Amendment 1 and so preserve the character of the core neighborhoods. Lest my position be misunderstood, I would further urge that they support public subsidies to allow first-time homeowners to begin to purchase the wonderful smaller homes that are increasingly monopolized by investors in the core neighborhoods. I have time for 3 points. First, the current upzoning proposal has been a single-minded top-down process which has created a mistrust of the municipal government that's both unfortunate and unnecessary. I sympathize with the position of the council, which has been presented with a finished proposal that has the potential to change drastically and irreversibly the town as we know it. We can do better if we work as a community in which diverse constituencies have a voice. Please remember that the planning division works for and represents one interested faction. It is critical for the integrity of the council that you not simply defer to the technocratic expertise of the planners without evaluating the soundness of their assumptions and their motives. Second, plexes in the core neighborhoods will not increase the stock of affordable housing. They will, on the contrary, be a bonanza for investors and developers. Simple, if you double the number of unrelated adults paying rent, not only the dwindling supply of modest bungalows, but all but a handful of the most expensive properties in Elm Heights become attractive targets for investors who can afford to put down $250,000 and still make an easy 12%, not counting appreciation. You can figure it out on the back of an envelope. It will become increasingly difficult for families, especially for first-time buyers, to compete. And there's a risk, too, that rising property values will make it difficult for older residents on fixed incomes to remain in their homes. Third and last, free market neoliberalism is not progressive. What you may have learned in high school economics class, that greater supply means lower prices, is a dangerous oversimplification, one promoted nationally by the real estate industry, to whom it has meant very handsome profits. With real estate, everything's tied to the specific locality, just as one size fits.
30 seconds, Mr. Marks, thank you.
One abstract principle won't give you a reliable view of future prices. There is, however, one thing that is certain: you're not going to redress social inequities by trusting to Reagan-era orthodoxies of neoliberalism, no matter how well disguised. As the comprehensive plan recognized, government must play a protective role. If you abandon that role and accept the specious reasoning in favor of upzoning, however well intended, the consequences for the city are likely to be drastic and irreversible. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Marks.
Next up, we have Mallory.
Welcome. Please state your full name.
Hi, my name is Mallory Rickbile. I love the city of Bloomington. I really do. I moved here from a smallish, sprawly, conservative town in Minnesota. And I'm not going to say that the place was hateful, but I will say that This American Life did a story on my hometown and how hateful it is. And it's a 2-episode arc. So that gives you kind of some perspective. I don't know if it means anything. Anyway, I don't come from money. I lived in a trailer with my parents and my 2 brothers until I was 3. And I didn't ever think that that was something to be ashamed of. I moved to Bloomington for a low-paying part-time job despite several red flags posed by my family when I was 24. And from the time when I moved here until last year, I have been housing insecure. And that also includes 1 year when I was homeless when I was 25. So last year, my husband and I built and moved into an accessory dwelling unit on our property, a property that was widely made legal by right in 2019 by some of you here today. And I will tell you that this has allowed me, someone who literally lives paycheck to paycheck, to be able to afford to live here and also begin to pay off my student debt, which I needed to be able to get a job here. And that has been such a great relief because I'm so used to just be worrying about money all the time. And the thing is, though, is that we could have built my ADU 2 years before we did. But because it was conditional, there was this process of paying fees. We went to a neighborhood association meeting. We sent mailings. I had to take off work to meet with planners 3 different times. I had to pay someone to help us draw a plan that we didn't actually have to pay someone, but it was ambiguous and we didn't know any better. In order to make this living option possible, and consequently, all of that time and energy, we decided that, you know what, this probably isn't worth it for us. And so we didn't apply for a loan and we didn't build our shed until last year. And that process was so arduous, and it wasn't like, and it was so arduous that it may not have been a barrier to others, but it was significant to me. And these are barriers that not only keep people out, but it is keeping us, this wonderful city, from actualizing its true potential for equity, inclusion, and respecting the dignity of people who live here. We don't have to live like this. And I wouldn't be here if I didn't think that Bloomington was capable of so much more. I wouldn't have stayed here if I didn't think that this was worth fighting for. Please support Plexes, and please support Plexes by right. Not everyone has the privilege of time to wait on this. There are people like me who are out here who want to live and contribute to this community, who has just as much to contribute as I do, and we need to make spaces for them. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Mr. Lucas.
Yes, next up, our next group of 5 is Kathy Crabtree, Sarah Cahalane, Sam Curry, Chris Sturbaum, and Joe Lee. And first up is Kathy Crabtree.
Before we continue, let me just say that we have I believe about 55 speakers left. And so if we could keep it even briefer than 3 minutes, you can help your neighbors along. So welcome, Ms. Crabtree. You have 3 minutes.
Hi, I'm Kathy Crabtree and a homeowner in the Near West Side. I moved here 7 years ago because it is a walkable neighborhood, allowing me access to downtown amenities without driving. However, due to skyrocketing home prices, this option is not available to many folks who also want to live here. My house has appreciated over 40% in 7 years. I likely couldn't afford to live here if I didn't already own. So I find it perplexing that folks act like so-called core neighborhoods are affordable. Affordable for whom? I support by right duplexes in all residential neighborhoods, including my own, because I want others to enjoy living here too. I did not move here to live in a gated community, even if the gates are invisible zoning restrictions. I support the UDO and zoning map submitted by the Plan Commission to City Council. Not getting everything you want does not make a process undemocratic. Democracy is about compromise. The amended UDO represents a compromise between what those of us seeking more housing and those opposing more housing wanted. Some folks fear that the amended UDO will change the character of their neighborhoods. If by character, they mean the look and feel of the structures, this is an unwarranted fear because on the design elements applied to duplexes under the amended UDO, the look and feel of the buildings will remain the same regardless of whether it is new construction, luxury, single-family home, or a duplex. For me, character is about the people who make up the neighborhood, not the structures. I welcome more people into the Near West Side, even if they can't afford the luxury of a single-family home. Some of my best neighbors have been renters, by the way. While I empathize with folks who are annoyed by their neighbors having parties and leaving cups in the front yard, prohibiting duplexes will do nothing to resolve that issue. That issue should be raised with the tenants and landlords, and if that does not resolve it, then with the city. Prohibiting duplexes will not prevent these types of violations. I'm reminded of the old adage, when all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. Address these problems with the appropriate responses and tools, not with exclusionary zoning. This amendment is disguised as a compromise.
You have 30 seconds.
maintains the status quo of exclusionary zoning in a time when the rest of the country is moving in a different direction towards the future. Bloomington professes to be progressive, but this is a regressive amendment. This is not 1980 or 1990. Solutions that worked then are not the answer now. This is not being disrespectful of the work our forebears did. It is acknowledging that this is a different time and situation.
Your time is expiring.
Please
Sorry.
vote no on this amendment.
Thank you. Mr. Lucas?
Next up is Sarah Cahalan, and
welcome.
Able to.
Hello. Thanks. Yeah, I just wanted to say thanks to Jackie, especially for outlining the consolidated plan and how this is actually part of what is in the consolidated plan. I've shared my story here before on some of these meetings before. I was lucky enough to use both state and city funds as a first-time home buyer to purchase a home here 6 years ago in the Waterman neighborhood. At this time, even with this money that helped me purchase a home, a person with my financial situation making $30,000 annually could not use these funds to purchase a home in the city because there are no affordable homes here in the city or the county. There have not been affordable homes here for over 5 years. I was lucky enough to get in just under when things started to go crazy with prices. So while I agree with the arguments that we need to offer more funds for those who wish to purchase homes, the programs as they exist right now will not work in this market, period. And there is also no such thing as a naturally occurring affordable housing, as I've heard many people say in these discussions. I'd like to remind everyone here that a duplex is a home. It's a home that someone who doesn't make much money might be able to afford. I know that the community members opposing plexes have canvassed neighborhoods and skipped rental homes. Many of these rentals are occupied by community members who contribute greatly to the city and despite having professional jobs, cannot afford to buy a home here. I'm really confused and disheartened to hear some council members who represent these renters who say that they do not believe that they, because they are renters, bring integrity to this community. Please give them and many others who want to stay in this community the opportunity to purchase a home, something that so many of you claim to care about. I know that change is scary, but like many people before me have said, we are at a turning point in this country, as well as this community, and we need all of the tools possible to face the challenges that lie ahead, especially those of us who are younger and don't have jobs with pensions and insurance. I want to see a community that is inclusive to everyone, not just those in the wealthy core. Please allow plexes in Bloomington. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
Next up is Sam Curry.
Welcome.
Yes, hello, thank you. Yeah, I just have a simple message for the council. Please let people live in Bloomington. And I would urge them to not try to control the type of person who can live in the city. And I don't think that people should have the right to veto or the ability to veto who their neighbors are going to be. Councilman Rowe talks about how developers do have an immense profit motive. And one implication of this is that it means that people want to live here and want to live in Bloomington. And I think they should have the opportunity to do so, and they will not if the housing situation in the city does not change. So I'm a student who will be graduating in a week. I may even be moving away from Bloomington shortly, but there will always be students and young people in town who need an affordable place to live. As other people have mentioned, I hope the council keeps in mind that the people who have time to speak at these meetings are not necessarily representative of the community as a whole. There is no way to address housing affordability without building more housing. So I hope you'll vote no on this amendment and support buy right plexes in the city. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
Next up is Chris Sturbaum.
Welcome.
Yes, hello. Hippocrates said in 400 BC, first, do no harm. Early on, I suggested to two local architects that we work on revising the conditions that would have a real effect on how and where density should go. They convinced me that without time to consider the differences in neighborhoods, this would be impossible to get right. 3 local architects went to the mayor and asked for more time. This request was rejected. Do no harm. So with the hope that City Council and Plan Commission would listen to our warnings, we've asked repeatedly to stop the current approval of duplexes in all single-family zones. We've spent untold hours trying to keep the city from making a terrible mistake. This radical zoning experiment can't be taken back once it's granted. Ask Tommy Allison. Do no harm. Conditional use as a compromise is useless as it currently stands. Ask Scott Robinson, who recently told the Plan Commission there would be little difference since the same conditions would apply whether staff or the BZA reviewed the petition. Do no harm. Zoning is a promise made to homebuyers. What about a 30-year loan and the biggest investment most families ever make aligns with a 3-ring binder for zoning changes? Let's admit it, this change would be a betrayal to those who bought homes in single-family neighborhoods. Do no harm. I have a friend who's looked for the right house for almost 5 years. Now he'll be competing with investors for that house. People are really buying in the county and surrounding counties. Do no harm. Most of the core neighborhoods are 50 to 65% already. This is a balance that works. This isn't anti-rental. But do we know the tipping point when Elm Heights and the other neighborhoods will start being all rental? Do no harm. Do we really want Minneapolis-like zoning that has already increased the prices of the least expensive real estate first? Do no harm. Is this a good time to add gas to the fire of rising real estate prices in Bloomington with an already hot market? Do no harm. Can we be sure there won't be displacement of affordable rental properties? The West Side has almost all of the affordable rental houses in Bloomington. Do no harm. Please don't make an historic mistake and irreparably harm our community.
You have 30 seconds.
This vote will be long remembered. Please vote yes on Amendment 1, and please, first, do no harm. And just a little comment about the talking about who owns the rentals. If you boil down what Jackie said, 1/3 of all rentals in Bloomington are not locally owned already. That's exactly what she said, but in a different way that sounded a lot more easy and safe. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, I believe, is Joe Lee.
Welcome.
Hello, and thank you all for being here and all the work you've done on this. About a century ago, H.L. Mencken wrote, "For every complex problem, there is an answer that is clear, simple, and wrong." Affordable homes, greater diversity, safely increasing density in infrastructure-poor neighborhoods, reducing car trips, protecting the core, all complex problems. Upzoning and plexes are the clear, simple, and wrong answer. Please vote yes on Amendment 1. And I would also suggest that to take up Councilmember Smith's idea to take that $22 million in rescue funds and use them to fund affordable homes. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Lee.
Our next group of 5 speakers will be Steve Brewer, Deborah Meyerson, Gail Weaver, and Alex Goodlad, and Russ Skiba. And first up, I believe we have Steve Brewer.
Welcome, Mr. Brewer.
Mute.
Mr. Brewer.
I'm sorry. Thank you. The neighborhoods to the north and east of campus once housed dozens, if not hundreds, of working class families. Now almost none do. Why? Permissive zoning, which turned those areas to student rental sectors. I fear the zoning for plexes will not achieve the egalitarian goals set forth to justify them. The broad critique of single-family zoning nationwide does not apply in all settings, particularly ones with transient student populations that can outbid locals for rentals close to town and campus. Please preserve the remaining comparatively modest home stock in Bloomington. As former Mayor Allison, the Board of Bloomington Restorations, Carrie Thompson, and others who have worked for decent and equitable housing recommend by voting yes for Amendment 1. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brewer.
Next up, we have Deborah Meyerson. And I believe Ms. Meyerson had some slides that she sent into the council office to display, and I will go ahead and share my screen now with those slides.
Thank you. I'm going to be talking about plexes and market forces. My name is Deborah Meyerson. I live in Elm Heights. I've worked in housing and community development for over 25 years, specializing in affordable and mixed income housing and looking at what makes that work. But I'm concerned about the lack of supply. I see on a postcard that has been circulating, plexes will increase rents and housing prices, reducing affordability for everyone. My goal today is to show some examples of the impact of current zoning that is reducing affordability for everyone. If you could go to the next slide, please. Thank you. Bloomington is growing. Currently, however, only single-family homes are allowed in 75% of Bloomington's residentially zoned land. Yet Bloomington has a housing shortage, and single-family detached homes are the most expensive housing type. That is not sustainable if we want to have inclusive or equitable housing options. Bloomington's exclusionary zoning rules currently ban duplexes in most neighborhoods, and I oppose Amendment 1, which would ban duplexes in zones R1 through 3. Owners simply convert existing single-family houses now into larger, more expensive single-family homes, and I'm going to show you some examples of that. Plexes can add housing diversity in walkable neighborhoods, and that creates more housing options. In the US, what we call affordable housing typically refers to housing with taxpayer subsidy, public money that helps lower the cost of housing. Yet we need more housing than subsidies could ever provide. Plexes provide solutions along a spectrum of affordability without spending public money. Desirable older neighborhoods that current homeowners think fondly of as affordable are simply not anymore. In the last couple of years, 5 houses on my block have gone up for sale. The lowest cost one was about $500,000, and it's gone up to, I think the top one was about $850,000. So we need to be aware that of what current zoning is doing. The next few slides are going to show the harm that has already been happening over the past few years in some older Bloomington neighborhoods. And all of these are examples of real estate purchased by speculators to upgrade and flip to homeowners. I don't know if we're going to get to slide 3 there.
All right, I think my screen may have crashed there. I apologize.
That's okay. If you can pull it up, that would be awesome. These are examples of, while the pictures are getting back up, these are examples in neighborhoods. And I'm not a real estate agent. I look this stuff up on Zillow and then look at what the purchase price was in Elevate on the GIS system, and that's where it's coming from. Yeah. Oh, you're going, okay. Well, he's giving me the hands up for 30 seconds. Or are you telling me that you can get my PDF up?
We're coming up on 3 minutes now. I apologize for the slides crashing.
Okay, that's
fine. Could you wrap it up in about 30 seconds?
I will. I know that the council members have received my slides, so hopefully you can look at those on your own. My bottom line is these houses are expensive because of a limited housing supply and exclusionary zoning. Single-family zoning is exclusionary because it prevents any other housing types from being built, even if people want to live in them. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
Next up, we have Gail Weaver.
Welcome. You have 3 minutes.
Okay, here I go. My name is Gail Weaver, and my husband Dave and I live on the Near East Side. I consider myself to be an optimist, but looking at the issues associated with zoning changes to allow duplexes by right throughout R1, 2, and 3, I cannot see any argument that this change would lead to an optimistic outcome. The reasons behind this zoning change, such as creating additional and more affordable housing, providing more equitable housing, and helping mitigate effects of climate change, are goals that are highly unlikely to be met by the proposal. When more than 700 residents from the neighborhoods, multiple neighborhoods, took a recent survey, over 60% were found to oppose the construction of duplexes in the single-family zones. When considering the issue, residents weighed the harm that they felt would come from allowing duplexes versus any potential gains and decided that there were just too many risks in making such a sweeping change. Some of the factors cited were loss of the neighborhood's unique character, including a mix of housing types, a good owner to renter balance, properties with mature trees and gardens, and quiet neighborhoods with adequate off-street parking. They also cited the very real possibility that others have talked about this evening, that developers might demolish or convert existing homes to duplexes to be sold or rented at high market rates, thereby actually reducing the current stock of affordable housing. Surely other solutions, ones that would be supported by the majority of residents, could be found that would meet Bloomington's stated goals to provide more affordable, equitable, and environmentally sustainable housing to replace this extremely unpopular zoning change. For all of these reasons, I respectfully ask you, the members of the Bloomington City Council, to follow the strongly held majority opinion of the residents of these areas and conclude there is a much greater risk of harm to our city than there is benefit to come from this action. Please vote yes on Amendment 1. Thank you.
Next up is Alex Goodlad.
Hello, can you hear me? Okay, I guess you can. So I want to talk about, some inconsistencies in the position for this amendment that I've noticed. It seems like, profit seems like something that's bad when it's done for plexes, not bad when it's bad when it's done in certain neighborhoods, not bad when it's done in others. And I just think there needs to be consistency. Do you not like it when developers buy up single family houses or ADUs? And I just think there should be some consideration with that. The second inconsistency is about just like, okay, so if we're going to assume that like you're going to be outbidded and that there's an incentive to outbidding them and that these houses are going to be bought up, you have to admit, and I think there has been some admission of that, is that plexes on the whole, and it's not just about supply and demand, it's also about like the size of the housing and the amount of bathrooms, which like that's what prices are based on, that overall lowers the cost. So it's Jim Sims said it best back in 2019. It's not just about affordable housing, it's about housing that is affordable. So even if I grant you that, housing companies are pretty awful, I'll, give you that, and that they make a profit, but there's also people that are making a profit obviously on the other side by not really caring about what the housing price is and just benefiting off of high property value. And you see a lot of comments on the other side give away their game when they complain about property values going down. I want to talk about the last and most important inconsistency that I've noticed, though, which is just about the whole democracy thing. I remember a meeting not too long ago that where like, the issue was the ordinance was unvetted. That was ordinance 2106. That was unvetted by the city. Now the tables have turned. Now we have to oppose the city. And now we have to listen to the constituents based on the numbers because, the numbers are advantageous. I'll give you the numbers. I've kept track of them. It's 18 for this amendment, 12 against, now 13 because I'm against the amendment, and then 1 neutral. So it's not as much of a ratio as it was with ordinance 2106. And we know that a lot of that accounts for the meeting being online instead of in person. And so now we're hearing a lot of people that are, younger and obviously benefiting from housing that is more affordable. So I think we should listen to those people. And I think we should keep in mind that, I know that the turnout in 2019 was low, but nevertheless, that's the election and we should, listen to democracy. And we had 2 representatives replaced well, I'm probably losing count, but one was Chris Sturbaum by Kate Rosenbarger, and the Plex issue was that issue, and we considered it before that election. So I think—
Mr. Goodlad, your time has expired. Sorry.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Russ Skiba.
Welcome, Mr. Skiba.
Thank you. My name is Russ Skiba. I'm from the Hoover Acres neighborhood, and I appreciate being able to speak to the council on this issue. Since the introduction of the upzoning proposal last October, Mayor Hamilton and the planning department have termed it an experiment that will help the city reach the comprehensive plan's goal of affordability and equity. So will this proposed citywide upzoning experiment, ending single-family zoning throughout the city, help Bloomington meet its goals of affordability and equity? As a researcher on equity at Indiana University for 25 years, I've just completed a review of the planning and zoning literature that all of you as council members have just received. For the community, it's posted at gofarthertogether.org under resources. After doing that, I don't really understand statements that research has shown that upzoning creates more affordable housing. The facts of the research are these. Contrary to predictions, the most recent and rigorous studies spanning a number of cities, upzoning decreases affordability without increasing the availability of affordable housing. Second, upzoning consistently leads to racial and economic displacement. As housing prices increase, those increases force low-income residents and residents of color out of established neighborhoods. Third, upzoning probably increases racial segregation by forcing low-income residents of color to move to lower-income neighborhoods that are even more racially and economically segregated. In particular, it's important to go over a very recent study. When Minneapolis passed its new upzoning plan in 2018, it became instantly famous as the first major American city to completely eliminate single-family zoning. In a study just published in the Journal of the American Planning Association, Professor Daniel Kuhlman evaluated the outcomes of the plan. He found out that compared to nearby neighborhoods without upzoning, homes in upzoned neighborhoods became significantly less affordable. The decline in affordability was greatest for homes in low-income areas than for smaller homes. That is, the homes that low-income residents would be most likely to be able to afford. One possible explanation he offered was that the significant increase in home prices was driven not by those earnest in their intention to develop denser housing, but primarily by real estate speculators. His conclusion was that the results, quote, raise concerns from those concerned about neighborhood change, displacement, and particularly the availability of affordable single-family homes.
You have 30 seconds.
Use the upzoning to replace existing single-family homes with attached 2 or 3 unit structures. It should not be surprising that they will start with relatively inexpensive and small houses. Upzoning decreases affordability, especially for low-income residents and residents of color. We need to be clear about the facts. I urge you to vote yes on this amendment and no on plexes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Skiba.
Next up, we have 2 comments that came in via chat that I will read out loud. The first comment comes from Rega Wood. Rega comments, my name is Rega Wood, and I'm a resident of the East Side neighborhood. As Dave Rollo pointed out, the price renters are willing to pay per bedroom is $600 to $1,000. That means that there is a substantial incentive for duplex conversions, but making these conversions will not increase housing costs. It will not increase the supply of affordable housing. Please vote in favor of Amendment 1. And the next comment comes from Dave and Linda Stewart. They say this message is from Dave and Linda Stewart. We are thankful for all who have spoken in favor of Amendment 1. We live in the Bryan Park neighborhood. We have lived in our home for more than 30 years. We are very much against plexes in the R1, R2, and R3 zoning districts, and we vote in city elections. Please vote yes for Amendment 1. And that is the end of the comment.
Thank you for those comments. Who do we have next, Mr. Lucas?
Our next 5 speakers will be Anna, Joe Bollinger, JJ McGee, Dave Warren, and Victoria White or Whitty. And first up, we have Anna, who should be able to unmute.
Welcome. Please state your full name.
Hi, my name is Anna Maria Mecca, and I want to express my dismay at the current zoning plan before you regarding plexes everywhere in Bloomington by right. Let me first begin by saying we all want to achieve the same goal of affordable housing in Bloomington, but I've heard various rationale for this upzoning, from sustainability to inclusion to density and so forth. The rationale seems to be a moving target. The market will not supply affordable housing, as many of you have heard. I believe this rushed adoption of the current national fad in zoning is an ill-conceived solution to Bloomington's problem. I would like to know why we are revisiting this exact idea after it was defeated by the City Council just 2 years ago. The solution at that time was to add ADUs. This addition to owner-occupied homes allowed for more flexibility for homeowners and added housing to neighborhoods while keeping home ownership a priority. And I've heard some people say, well, you were against it before you were for it. It was a compromise, and I believe it was a good compromise, so that home ownerships could become duplexes there by having an ADU, and that is still allowed. Right now, you can have a duplex if you own your home, and that creates greater density and affordability, and it was a compromise on this whole notion, and I believe it was a good one. This current proposal will open the floodgates for investors, not homeowners, to purchase single-family homes and turn them into expensive rentals. If you have any doubt about the future, just look at what is currently happening in our neighborhoods. Green Acres is one sorry example.
Oh, okay.
It used to have an abundance of owner-occupied affordable homes. Check the weekly property transfers to see single-family homes purchased by LLCs. The Plan Commission skirted this difficult decision by throwing it at the council to deal with. Don't be fooled by conditional use as a compromise. It is not and does nothing to fix the real problem with plexes in R1, 2, and 3. What specifically has the city done in the past few years to assist with home ownership or create affordable rentals? We do
You have
need
30 seconds.
We do need workforce housing close to campus, and other universities and cities have found creative solutions to the problem. I ask you to look carefully at the comprehensive plan. It states that core neighborhoods should not be the source of densification. I urge you to vote to eliminate plexes in R1, 2, and 3 as stated in Amendment 1. Your vote defines the future of our beloved city. Be careful. If we make this mistake at a critical moment, we will not be able to go back. The process needs to be stopped so that the council has time to do whatever they think is necessary to do no harm. Thank you.
Your time has expired. Thank you very much.
Next up is Joe Bollinger.
Welcome. You have 3 minutes.
Yes, thank you very much. My name is Joe Bollinger. I encourage the council to oppose Amendment 1, support plexes by right. Is this change the only thing we can do to promote affordable housing? No, it is not. It's not even the best thing we can do, but it is a piece of the puzzle, and it's one where we can harness the power of market forces to further our collective goals. Markets by themselves are neither good nor bad. They're simply a tool with certain properties, strengths, and weaknesses. And when they can help us, we should use them. I am a renter and have lived in Bloomington as one for 15 years, first as a graduate student, then as a professional. I would submit to the council members that the affluent voices represented by the homeowners here this evening, who of course have every right to fight for their interests, and who are obviously well-intentioned, are nevertheless not a representative sample of this community as a whole. It's been stated multiple times this evening that having renters as neighbors is bad for the neighborhoods, that we're loud, that we're unconcerned with our neighbors, that we're a problem to be avoided. I frankly resent the implication that renters like me are inherently destructive or destabilizing to neighborhoods. You know what? If I had the opportunity to be your neighbor, I can tell you that by God, I'd be a good one. Let me be clear about one undeniable fact. Absent extreme changes in my personal circumstances, I will never be able to afford a $300,000 single family detached home, which, as mentioned before, is at the low end of the prevailing selling price for the supposedly affordable houses in our core neighborhoods. What I might be able to afford when I'm ready is a unit that's part of a multifamily unit like a duplex or triplex. I'd also love more opportunities to find rental options in the walkable core neighborhoods. I would encourage the council to follow the guidance of our planning experts on city staff and our plan commission, and to remember that renters are part of this community too, and our interests matter. We are not second-class citizens. Homeowners matter, of course, but their interests are not the only ones that matter. We are your constituents too. Please consider the voices that can't be here tonight. Please support inclusionary zoning. Please oppose Amendment 1. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comment. Next up, Mr. Lucas.
Next up, I believe, is screen name JJ McGee.
Welcome.
Yes,
state
hello.
your full name.
Hi, my name is Jonna McGee. I live on the near south side of town. I own a Plex. I live in a condo, but I would never be able to afford a single family home in this community at my current income. However, I support Amendment 1. Councilmember Smith, I support your idea of using grant money to support affordable single family home ownership. I know many people who have lived and worked here for decades who can't afford even a modest single family home and increasingly can't afford to rent here. However, what I wanted to talk about tonight is the fact that people talking about density tend to talk like it's the only answer. And it has completely derailed any discussion of public transportation. I grant that as it currently exists in Bloomington, it's not very efficient. It does tend not to be very efficient, but I do believe that the experiment we need to make is aggressive investment in truly efficient public transportation that everyone can use. And that will make housing options further out, affordable housing options like plexes, truly usable for people who have an effective, affordable public transportation. Also, now that more people are able to work from home, that also helps to free people from needing to live in the city center. It frees us from density. So before we make irreversible changes to our zoning, I believe we need to consider these changes coming to our culture, our workplace culture, and we need to invest in public transportation, especially now that there's likely to be federal money to help with that. Please support Amendment 1 and public transportation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McGee.
Next is Dave Warren.
Right, good evening, and thanks so much to all the city staff, city council, and community members on both sides of this debate who have been working very hard on this issue for many years now, dating back to the mid-2010s with the comprehensive plan process. I'm requesting that you vote against Amendment 1, which would simply continue Bloomington's one-size-fits-all policy of prioritizing the most expensive type of house on most residential land in the city. Too many are conflating home ownership with detached single-family house ownership in this debate, which is frustrating considering such homes are the most expensive to buy, and at this point far too expensive for most of the 65% of the city who don't already own their own home. If we wanted to encourage more affordable car ownership or more affordable car leases, we wouldn't ban the production of compact cars and small sedans in favor of Hummers. If we wanted to ensure people had enough food to eat, we wouldn't pass laws that prevent people from growing their own food or require grocery stores to only sell the most expensive name brand products. Yet for shelter, one of life's most basic necessities, Bloomington's local government strictly limits where the more affordable housing types can go, instead prioritizing the most expensive type of house. This makes homeownership much harder than it would be if there were more housing options throughout the city. It also harms renters, as single-family homes also happen to be the most expensive type of house to rent. With home values in Bloomington and Monroe County increasing 40% since January 16, that's two full 20% down payments in 5 years. We simply cannot afford to keep this ban in place. While by-right duplexes make much more sense in that they reduce the required amount of time spent by city staff and reduce costs for the homeowner, a compromise of conditional duplexes would at least be a small step toward a more sensible zoning code, one that I hope we can continue to improve over time with further measures that increase housing diversity and reduce costs. One last thing, someone earlier mentioned the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. Well, we've gone 26 years now, 26 years in a row, expecting housing to get more affordable under this one-size-fits-all policy. It certainly hasn't worked. Please vote no on continuing this 26-year-old Plex ban. Thank you.
Thanks for your comment.
Next up is Victoria Witt, who should now be able to unmute.
Welcome.
My name is Victoria Whitty, and I am here to urge you to adopt Amendment number 1. The core neighborhoods near the university need protection from over-occupancy. That's why that was written into the UDO. They cannot absorb additional rentals. They are all very, very dense already. When you think about how relatively inexpensive it would be to convert a present rental to a duplex, you'd be doubling your income. Surely it seems reasonable that this would be happening more and more in these core neighborhoods. Due to their proximity to the university, these duplexes will be aimed at students and they will be rented by students. They won't be affordable to the missing middle. This will lead to a lack of diversity in these areas. They'll become overpopulated with student rentals. The core neighborhoods can't handle an influx of additional density. I hope that you do the right thing and support Amendment number 1. There has to be a better way to accomplish your ends. You keep saying that this is just part of the solution, that there are other options. Well, why not try a couple or 3 of those other options, whatever they happen to be, rather than destabilize neighborhoods that now are livable and diverse? Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
Next up, we have the next 5 speakers, Tom Millen, Jean Simonian, Greg Alexander, Greg Rago, and Sarah Copper. And I believe Tom Millen is up first and should be able to unmute.
Welcome.
Hello, I'm Tom Millen. I live in the Bryan Park neighborhood. My family's been living in this house for 6 decades now. I'm for the Amendment 1. It makes sense. The concern I have is with infrastructure in town that we add more density. There's not consideration to add to the infrastructure such as pipes, water, electricity, and things like that. So I am in favor of the Amendment 1 as you had presented. That is all. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
Next up is Jean Simonian.
Welcome, Ms. Simonian. You have 3 minutes.
Hi, Mr. Lucas, I believe you have an exhibit to screen share for me.
I do indeed.
If you could do that, thank you.
Can folks see that?
Yes.
Yeah, or you can scroll down more so the bottom shows is fine. As there have been inquiries about the source of this housing inventory data, I'd like to say, first of all, that it was compiled by Margaret Clements, PhD in public policy and current president of the County Plan Commission, not someone who is unfamiliar with development research, and that it was compiled and verified through multiple public sources of information, including Monroe County Building Department records, tax assessment records, and Herald Times reporting. If all of these sources and others are indeed incorrect, then our city has a bigger problem than housing. I would challenge planning and transportation to make their specifics publicly transparent, as the League of Women Voters suggests, before engaging in an attempt to discredit public reporting. The Bloomington 2020 Housing Study notes on page 49 that by the year 2030, Bloomington would need 1,037 new rental units, most of those affordable. Now, even by Ms. Scanlon's accounting of 3,300 new rental units, the Bloomington Housing Study specifies we would need 229 market rate rental units by the year 2030. Clearly, we have built far in excess of that need of market rate housing. So the notion that the private market will build anything for affordability is ridiculous. My question for council is a simple one. What are we doing here? Why are we even considering upzoning, the wrong tool to incentivize affordability? An action that even plan commissioners admitted will incentivize further
30 seconds.
market rate rental development at the expense of ownership. As a former speaker said quite eloquently, the money is there. Please support Amendment 1. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
And next up, we have Greg Alexander.
Welcome, Mr. Alexander. You have 3 minutes, excuse me.
Great. Hi, my name is Greg Alexander. I love duplexes and oppose Amendment 1. I just wanted to bring attention to a few phrases that I've personally been hearing over and over. The first is naturally occurring affordable housing. Man, a house here just flipped from 73,000 to 320,000 in 2 years. That's the affordability trend for single family housing. There is actual naturally occurring affordable housing in my neighborhood. It does exist. It's all in apartment buildings. Another one, people that actually live here. You know, this is one of my favorites because renters actually live here. You know, another I hear, at least owners develop equity. You know, that's true. Owners develop equity, but who are those people? Some people aren't in a position to buy a house and they are excluded from any neighborhood that's exclusively owner occupied. If that's your goal, you're excluding people. Another, preserving historic character. The historic character of my neighborhood is higher density than the single family houses we have today. I want some of that back. Big developers. Big developers want to build hundreds of units. Duplexes are exciting for small developers, including residents like myself who want to invest locally and add housing to my neighborhood at the same time. This is the alternative to big developers. Another I hear, willing to pay high rent. Yes, students are willing to pay high rent, but that doesn't just disappear if you restrict the supply in the market. Students even drive up prices when they rent whole houses, which they will if that's what's available. Rentals are less affordable. You know, I hear that so much. If rentals are the most expensive housing kind, then why do most poor people rent? And I've heard comparisons. This really blows my mind. I've even heard comparisons to urban renewal. There's one aspect of this process that does actually parallel historic housing segregation. That's the phenomenon where people threaten to leave if the wrong kind of person makes their presence known in the neighborhood. Thanks for your time.
Thanks for your comment.
Next is Greg Rago. Should be able to unmute.
Welcome, Mr. Rago.
You got me?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, this is Greg Rago again. And this is all we need is more chaos. I don't have a graduate degree, but I'm a proud member of the Bryant Park Neighborhood Association for over 36 years. I am the missing middle. Longtime residents are well aware of the demographics and economics of Bloomington's core neighborhoods. That's why we live here. The Hamilton administration's bias study is reminiscent of another recount to remedy another unsatisfactory political result. It has a lot of numbers, but it's an equation. It can be manipulated. The study has way too many naive assumptions for the intentions of commercial developers. Developers act in good faith. It's more like carte blanche. These changes favor commercial marketplace forces. Marketplace forces have one goal: profit. There are way too many questions. This broad stroke of the UDO is not the answer. Bloomington has always been a place of diversity and change. To say Amendment 1 is against this in any way is wrong. Rather, it encourages it and promotes it. I support Amendment 1. Listen to experience in Bloomington. Tommy Lee, Allison, and Charlotte Zitlow have given us great guidance over the years. Support Amendment 1. Please don't ram this down our throats. Give more info to the public. Vote in 2023. Be fair. Make this a pertinent campaign issue. Let the citizens decide. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
Next up is Sarah Copper.
Welcome, Ms. Copper.
Hi, my name's Sarah Copper, and I am a homeowner in Elm Heights and a former renter in Bryan Park, and I welcome flexes in my neighborhood. We do not own a car, which means that when we were looking to buy a home, we needed to find a place where we could easily walk and bike around town with our 2 young children, which naturally led us to prioritize finding a home in a core neighborhood. We would have loved to purchase and live in a duplex had there been one available at the time. It's not just students who would seek out this kind of housing if it was more readily available. In these discussions, I've heard a lot of worst case scenarios, but when I imagine, what would it look like if a duplex came to my block? I don't see my neighborhood being destroyed. In fact, I don't see my neighborhood being diminished in any way. I see more people able to join in the community that we have built here. Let's take one small step in adding more housing options for residents and allow duplexes. I urge you to vote no on this amendment and support duplexes. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comment.
Our next group of 5 speakers will be Patrick, Sarah Mosier, Erica Walker, Steve Lehman, and Meredy and Joe Lamontia. And I believe first up is Patrick.
Welcome. Please state your full name.
Thank you. My name is Patrick Siney. I appreciate your time, each and every one of you. To make it simple, it's getting late. Just I support Amendment 1. I believe I have so much to say, but thank you so much. I support Amendment 1, and thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you for your comment and brevity. Who's up next?
Next is Sarah Mosier, who should be able to unmute.
Welcome.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. My name is Sarah Mosier. I'm a resident and homeowner in the Prospect Hill neighborhood, which is near downtown. My family's been in Bloomington for at least 5 generations, and I'm asking you to vote no on this amendment because I support adding duplexes as an additional housing option in my neighborhood and throughout town. We have a house right down the street that's, multiple families live there, and I want to see more of that in my neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
Next up is Erica Walker.
Hello, I'm a homeowner in Prospect Hills. And before that, I was a renter in Bryan Park. And let me tell you what it took for me to be a homeowner in this town. First, I had to get two graduate degrees. My husband had to get a graduate degree. My grandma had to die and leave me money. And then I had to get a really high paying job. When I think about what it would look like to have duplex in my neighborhood, I get excited. I want to take this step forward, and I really appreciate all the thought and research that the city has put into making this decision. And I had a longer comment prepared, but if you were going to stop listening to me because I don't support this amendment, I'd like you to listen to me now. If I was in this room now, before I was thinking about buying a house, and it took all of that grandma's death, many degrees, cool job to be here, and I heard how much you all fear students. You don't want students in this community. You don't want to live next to students. I don't know that I would want to be here. I'm so glad I didn't hear those comments. It actually makes me really emotional because when you talk about destroying the neighborhoods, the only destruction I've heard talked about tonight is the effect of students in this community. Students make Bloomington what it is. The university makes Bloomington what it is. And if you don't like it, there are other communities with plenty of single family homes out in the country in the surrounding areas. You all that have stood against this progress that many of us, and I'm sorry, there's an age divide here. I don't want to be ageist, but there clearly is. You were able to buy homes in a time when you could probably pick up a home for less than $100,000. I bought my home last year. I didn't do anything to it, and it's already increased by 12% just because I bought it in the downtown area. So I do not support this amendment. I support plexes by right, and I ask you to think about what many other folks have said here tonight, which is that many of the folks that had the time to sit on the computer and make comments, they are not representative of the total community. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Next is Steve Lehman.
Welcome. You have 3 minutes. Mr. Lehman? You'll need to unmute. Mr. Lehman? Can we proceed to the next speaker and perhaps Mr. Lehman can unmute after that?
Next is Meredy and Joe Lamontia, and they should now be able to unmute.
Yes.
Welcome.
Yes, thank you very much. I'm a resident of Prospect Hill, have been for 34 years. I love this community. I love my neighbors. I love the students. I would like for you to please vote for Amendment 1. We do have duplexes in our community, and they seem to work pretty good. But with building duplexes and having 6 people to each unit, there's things that I wonder about, at least in our neighborhood. Parking. It's nice to think that everybody would like to walk, but I don't believe people are going to just want to give up their cars. So there's no guarantee that people are going to walk. We had a bicycle project and turned out that people that were going to live in there were going to use their bicycles, but people still have to have cars. So what do you do with the cars? Build garages, I guess. When I was a renter, we had rent control, but I believe that doesn't exist here in the state. That would be something that I would really try to have changed so that people could have afford apartments or afford it would be the closest thing to affordable housing, I guess. And I think I'll just leave it at that. And I hope that you vote for Amendment 1. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Mr. Lucas, could we return to Mr. Lehman?
Yes, Mr. Lehman should be able to unmute now. If
Mr. Lehman, if you would like to comment, please unmute. All right, he's not unmuting, so let's proceed.
Next, we have James Allison.
Welcome.
Actually, you have Tommy Allison.
My name is Tommy Allison. As mayor of Bloomington, I went through citywide rezoning, so I know how difficult and how important it is to listen and understand the different stakeholders. And tonight, please remember, these are people's homes. These are historic districts. I am proud of having helped make Bloomington a livable city for all and have encouraged healthy neighborhoods citywide. It has been the community working together that has produced the Bloomington we love. With stakes so high for so many people's homes, there is no need to rush. You will save the city a whole lot of headaches if you take the time to get it right. The controversy has come to be focused on the missing middle market, housing market in the core neighborhoods near IU. Core neighborhoods like Elm Heights point out that the comprehensive plan says repeatedly and directly, protect the core neighborhoods and locate the plexes to hubs and corridors. But our plan commission passes citywide upzoning with plexes by right. We are told not to worry. Planning says the UDO protects core neighborhoods with conditional uses. Trust us. We can always make changes later. How do they coexist, these conditional uses and these duplexes by right? Don't they contradict each other? Does anyone understand how the contradictions will play out? What are the legal ramifications? Can the city be sued because of these contradictions? In such a serious matter, trust is not enough. These are people's homes, their neighborhoods. Generations have built these communities. Stakeholders should be able to understand the ramifications of any proposal. Take the time to get it right. Support Amendment 1. Don't stir up a tornado. This is not the land of Oz. There are no ruby slippers. This is Bloomington, and we can work together better than this.
Thank you, Mayor Allison. Who do we have next, Mr. Lucas?
Our next 5 speakers will be Peter, Keith Dinga, Richard Durson, a written comment from Holly Stocking and several other members, and then Sarah Wolford. And first up from that group is Peter, who should be able to comment now.
Welcome, Peter. Please state your full name.
Peter Dorfman from the Near West Side. Thank you for letting me speak. I've been hearing all evening the unquestioning position that we have a shortage of housing in Bloomington. Yeah, we have a lot of people saying that they can't find housing they can afford here, but that does not make the case that we actually have a shortage of housing. And the numbers that Jean Simonian presented make that case very eloquently. The Bloomington Economic Development Corporation estimates that we need 5,200 new units of housing. And by the way, a lot of those are affordable and workforce housing units. By that number, by that measure, we are significantly ahead of schedule in building the housing that we need between now and 2030, which is 9 years away. So yeah, a lot of people are having trouble finding houses they can afford. Every city has that problem. Bloomington has it because wages are absurdly low here, as we've been hearing over and over again from people who spoke tonight. Much of our workforce doesn't make enough money to live in Bloomington, but there's a more direct reason why rents are high in the city. Housing is expensive in Bloomington for the same reason healthcare is expensive in the US. The people who use it are not the ones paying for it and don't care what it costs. Rent is high because market rates for rent in Bloomington are set by many thousands of student tenants, and nothing against students, but their moms and dads are paying the bills, we probably have thousands of IU students who don't even know what they're paying for housing. Increasing the market rate supply of housing is not a solution for this. If we want affordability, we'll have to achieve it through rent or down payment subsidies and through public housing. If you don't do those things first, upzoning is useless. I support Amendment 1, and I hope you will too. Thank you for letting me speak. Thanks.
Thank you for your comment.
Next up is Keith Dinga, who should be able to comment.
Welcome. You have 3 minutes.
Hello, good evening. I support Amendment 1. I would like to say that people can afford to live here. I lived here for 17 years and have always had a place to live. I have lived in probably 10 locations throughout my time here, ranging from low rent as a student to, a decent mortgage as a homeowner. I will say that there was someone earlier from the Development Commission that said that increased housing near the core will increase affordability. This is simply incorrect. It is basic economics. Those are high demand areas and they will demand a premium in rent and cost. I'd say the finance professor who spoke earlier probably knows what he's talking about. And for those who say that they can't afford to live downtown, that's not as profound or uncommon as they might think. Let's imagine all the people who work in downtown Chicago complaining that they can't afford to live downtown. The location clearly plays a role in value of the property. The constituents are against duplexes. You could just listen to everyone on here. And I know that we've had to revisit this since 2019 when this was originally voted against. The council members who sponsored Amendment 1 are clearly listening to their constituents. People on here are also talking about sustainability, but packing in more people into a smaller area creates a higher demand on infrastructure, which I heard someone else bring up, which the cost of this is something that has not been talked about this evening. The plexes added in high demand locations such as Elm Heights will not decrease the cost of this area. It will only create higher rental costs in the area and drive out the long-term homeowners over time. I haven't heard anyone who's against Amendment 1 discuss the land value of current homeowners and take their concerns into consideration. This is turning into a monolithic argument. The UDO plan by the City Planning and Development Services does not have real answers to many of the questions asked by the councilmen and women who sponsor Amendment 1. Are we just going to approve plexes without a long-term plan? Another commenter on here tonight said that the rent in Bloomington is on par with that in Chicago, which is patently untrue. The rent in Bloomington is only 59% of the average Chicago rent. The median sale price for existing homes in the United States is $295,000, while the median home price in Bloomington is $247,000. So the idea that Bloomington is unaffordable is not true when compared to the rest of the United States.
You have 30 seconds.
As an earlier commenter said, there is no danger to waiting until we can meet in person. I support Amendment 1, and I hope the rest of the council does too. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
Next up is Richard Durson.
Welcome.
Thank you. I strongly urge that you vote yes on Amendment 1. I'm a long-term homeowner in Elm Heights, but I do have personal experience with the difficulty young people experience trying to own a home because of the current real estate market. My comments have an unusual slant. I'm a computational astrophysicist who models complex dynamic systems. Cities and their housing markets are complex dynamic systems. What is being proposed is an experiment on a real-world system in the hopes that deregulation achieves specific goals like affordability, sustainability, inclusiveness, and equity. This is dangerous because results of unregulated experiments with real-world systems are difficult to predict, and because some consequences can be irreversible. Climate change is a prime example on a global scale. In this case, we do have some idea where deregulation might lead. How often have unregulated free markets, like real estate speculation, ever served sustainability, equity, inclusiveness, and affordability? Making duplexes conditional rather than by right is no compromise. It adds an extra bureaucratic step that will not seriously deter developers. The duplexes will still end up essentially everywhere and anywhere. I'm not against plexes per se, but their placement should be carefully planned, not unregulated. This is why the process is called city planning. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comment.
Next up, we have several written comments. The first comes from Holly Stocking. And Holly says, I live in Elm Heights. If you think the core neighborhoods won't be damaged by proposed upzoning, think again. It's already happened right here. In the early 1970s, my late husband bought a lovely turn-of-the-century home north of campus, which the two of us lived in until 1982. Unbeknownst to Bill, when he purchased the home, Mayor Hooker had already overseen what former Mayor Tommy Allison had called a massive wholesale upzoning of land to business and multifamily uses. Within a few short years, many single-family homes populated by a mix of elders and young families in that area gave way to developer-converted rentals, charging astronomical rents given the proximity to campus. By the early 1980s, things had changed so much that my husband and I joined the exodus of families who could no longer tolerate the changes to our lives from the influx of a large number of undergraduate students. We loved the neighborhood and hated to leave, but life there was no longer a good place for a single family like ours. That particular experiment in upzoning was irreversible. Today, the area north of campus is nothing but rentals. Please support Amendment 1. Let's not make the same mistake twice and lose our core neighborhoods. And that's the end of that particular comment. The next comment comes from Kate Young. Kate says, I live in McDowell Gardens. I support adding duplexes as an additional housing option throughout Bloomington. Another comment from Mark Robleski says, please vote yes on Amendment 1 and no to plexes. And finally, Kathleen Myers comments, I can't stay up. Please vote yes on Amendment 1. As Ms. Scanlon stated, they do not know what this experiment will do, and they don't have the data yet. Let's study this by neighborhood and work together on solutions rather than push this through for the whole city now. With little local evidence, it will work. Thank you to you all. And those are the written comments I've received. I believe.
Thank you, Mr. Lucas.
Our next speaker is Sarah Wolford.
Welcome. You have 3 minutes.
Hello, my name is Sarah Wolford. I grew up and now own a home in Bryan Park neighborhood. The conversation we are having today is one of opportunity, and who has the right to that opportunity. Duplexes offer more people the opportunity to affordable housing, environmental living, accessibility, and diversity. Affordability is a paramount issue in Bloomington. Although duplexes won't be a wholesale fix, it is a tool that can be used to help. Giving organizations like Habitat for Humanity or homeowners of Section 8 properties the opportunity to convert or build duplexes will provide more families with affordable housing. Completely new construction will always be the most expensive, which is why converting our current housing stock is our best option. Duplexes would add another option for people wanting starter homes. More people deserve the chance to live in the core neighborhoods instead of being forced into apartments that are popping up on the outskirts of town, forcing people to commute and contributing to traffic and climate change. As more people realize the threat of climate change, more people want to live close to what they need, either reducing their commute or allowing them to live a car-free lifestyle. Densifying the core neighborhood allows that to happen. As Bloomington grows and units in the core neighborhoods stay the same, a smaller and smaller percentage of Bloomingtonians are allowed the opportunity to live here. It becomes an issue of accessibility, not only to those of less means, but also to those with disabilities such as myself, who are prevented from driving and therefore living near downtown is a necessity. The more people that we allow into our neighborhoods, the more varied the type of housing, the more diverse our neighborhoods and neighborhoods will be. Amendment 1 is a classic example of not in my backyard policy, pushing people in the socioeconomic minority to the outskirts. I believe we all deserve the opportunity to affordable housing, environmental living, accessibility, and diversity. Duplexes are a good first step. I do not support Amendment 1. Thank you.
Thank you.
I believe our next 5 speakers will be Perry Hodges, Chaz Modinger, William Coulter, Steve Akers, and Matthew Kloss. And up next is Perry Hodges.
Welcome. Is Perry Hodges there?
Yes,
You
I
need to
am.
unmute. Thank you.
Yes, I am. Thank you. Please vote yes for Amendment 1. The Plex plan as currently proposed will not provide affordability and equitable housing to the people who want and need it. Different neighborhoods have different problems and needs and strengths. Poor neighborhoods like mine, that is Elm Heights, are already saturated with rentals, and they happen to be because they are close to the community and developers exploit the market. These houses could have been affordable houses. They are not now, and they won't be in the future. It would be great to have a more diverse group of people who rent these homes. No one has shown just how the plexes, that is, plexes near the university, will solve the problem. That is, will actually provide affordable homes for those who want to live here, the young professionals and families and income and lower income residents. Please vote yes for Amendment 1 and work on a plan that really works for those who want to live here, who contribute to life here, and who keep the city up and running. As I see it, the disconnect is between what the plan claims it will accomplish and what the reality is likely to be. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
Next up is Chaz.
Hi, thank you so much for your time and attention. I just want to say that I'm also a young person. I'm 30, my partner is 31. We are recently going to buy a house here in Bloomington. We've been long-time renters for the last 10 years. And I just want to say that I want density too. We both do, and all my friends do as well. We understand the importance of it, and it really is vital. But we also want less rentals. We want houses and apartments, condos, plexes, anything to be owned by real people, not companies. And I don't think that with this UDO, there's enough regulations to achieve that. So I do urge you to vote for Amendment 1 because I think that provides some answers to it with allowing some things as well. I think the argument after hearing, people there's lots of emotions with this, and I totally can understand. We've had struggles too, but I think that this argument is also about generational wealth and the difference between being young and old in this town. And this isn't going to solve anything. The housing isn't. Salaries, more jobs, better pay. These things are a lot to achieve, and it's not going to be solved with just this UDO or not. So I do think the Amendment 1 is a better answer, and I really urge you to consider that. And I think that, there are other things we need to be doing that will solve more of these problems. Like was stated, this isn't necessarily going to make things affordable. The city planner even said that in her speech. So I just want people to realize that this doesn't equal affordability. And I think we need to care more about the things that will do that and will increase home ownership. I know in this country, our capitalist society, home ownership is a way to get more wealth. And I think that we need to be encouraging home ownership. I think we need more condos. I don't think we need more apartments. I don't think we need even more plexes. I think we need condos that people can actually own. There are just other ways we could go about this to achieve these things. So I really urge you to vote Amendment 1 for now, and then we can go back to the drawing board and kind of do these other things that I think will actually get the results that we want. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for your comment.
Next up is William Coulter.
Welcome. You have 3 minutes.
Please vote yes for Amendment 1. For 2 years, advocates for upzoning have denounced what they call exclusionary zoning. David Ambrosio of the University of Louisville, a critic of the way upzoning proponents have used this term to rationalize dismantling zoning laws, refers to this nationwide campaign as the Anti-EZ Project, EZ for exclusionary zoning. Ambrosio views this campaign, backed by developers and investors, as anti-democratic and neoliberal. I agree. Here's Ambrosio on the anti-democratic methods. The Anti-EZ Project strongly endorses the so-called builder's remedy instituted by New Jersey as well as other states. With this procedure, developers designed to build in jurisdictions deemed too restrictive have an option to override local land use controls at the state level if their proposed market rate developments include a minimum share of more affordable units. Thus, what is called for by the Anti-EZ Project in the name of advancing social justice is the same undemocratic cudgel, state preemption, that is currently being used by the right wing throughout much of the nation to stymie social justice. Neoliberalism commonly refers to market-oriented reform policies such as eliminating price controls, deregulating capital markets, and reducing, especially through privatization and austerity, state influence in the economy. It is also commonly associated with economist Milton Friedman and politicians Margaret Thatcher and Ronald Reagan. Ambrosio says about the neoliberal methods, the Anti-EZ Project, like all neoliberal projects, embraces the so-called judgment of the market in regard to what is considered to be a just and legitimate basis for discrimination in housing. From this vantage point, it is acceptable to deny housing to families with limited means as long as this lack of affordability results from market rather than political processes. A case of market justice trumping political justice. Yet, as a wealth of recent research has well documented, it is these same market processes that generate the massive inequalities in income and wealth that lead to most of the housing affordability problems in the first place.
I'm afraid your time is nearly up, so please.
In the end, Ambrosio finds the cure worse than the disease. And it's hard for me to see how upzoning is going to help Bloomington.
Thank you for your comment.
Next up is Steve Akers.
Welcome, Mr. Akers.
Hello, my name is Steve Akers. I live on the east side in the Park Ridge neighborhood. First of all, I'd like to say please vote yes on Amendment 1. I'll try not to repeat any of the points that I made in a letter to all council members earlier in the last couple of days. I must say I trusted city government representatives to maintain and protect our single family neighborhoods to be owner occupied, and that occurred in the rejection of the proposal in 2019. My neighborhood, I'll talk a little bit about, my neighborhood is a diverse neighborhood with multi-generational families, multiple ethnic backgrounds, university and non-university citizens, single parents, widows, elderly, young families with lots of kids, and students. We love students. We are a sustainable neighborhood using the original Daisy Gordon bike path to travel to work and to local businesses. We walk and we ride. We love the Bloomington transit system that we use and the network of bike paths. We do not all drive thanks to this, again, I'll say the bike path system. I am concerned also, and it's been voiced a couple of times this evening, about our infrastructure in terms of utilities, water, sewer, and electric. If we increase density using our current infrastructure, this is a big concern, and this really has not been looked into. I don't think so adequately. Jackie made reference to it with Scott when he talked to Vic Kelson, but it was about a minute and a half comment where Vic said, "Oh, we'll be fine," and that was it. That's all we heard about infrastructure. So that's a concern. Finally, this move to allow duplexes against the comprehensive plan is not cool. This is already stated by Councilman Rollo. The city spent hours and days and hours and taxpayer money on consultants to develop the comprehensive plan. So please respect the comprehensive plan. I challenge the Planning and Transportation Department to seek other methods to create more housing that is affordable for those in the missing middle. My heart goes out to the missing middle. They do need a place to live, and I know they love to live in my neighborhood. So let's get creative. Let's go back to the drawing board. We've got a talented planning department.
30 seconds.
And there have been some great ideas this evening shared in terms of public housing and rent control. Let's continue and go down that path and help the missing middle. So please vote yes on Amendment 1. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
Next up is Matthew Kloss.
Welcome, Mr. Kloss.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. First off, thanks everyone. Really appreciate all your time. It's great to see local government at work like this. I'm a Bloomington resident for 9 years. Most recently lived in the Madison Park condos. So I'm a proponent of condos. It's a great place to live. But I did just buy a house on Dodd Street. So I'm now a member of Councilperson Piedmont Smith's district. I'm looking forward to some meetings with you soon. So many great things have already been said. I don't feel like I can add anything to either side. I just want to share some personal experience and a George Carlin quote. One of which is, just the other night, I ate at a real nice family restaurant. Every table had an argument going. So I believe I speak for the people when I say that we should use grant money to reopen Darn Good Soup. And then I want to share an article published by the Brookings Institute called "To Improve Housing Affordability, We Need Better Alignment of Zoning, Taxes, and Subsidies." 3 points there. We need zoning reform. Whether we do that now or whether we do that later, that's part of a three-pronged plan. We need land value taxes. We need to make it more expensive for people to hold on to land for a long time. And we need more housing subsidies. If we want affordable housing, the job of government is to make sure that the people can live. And I'll finish this up with another George Carlin quote: "May the forces of evil become confused on the way to your house." Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
Ready for our next group of 5 speakers that will include Jamie Scholl, Molly, J.A. Whitmer, Eobon Binder, and Richard Lewis. And first up is Jamie Scholl.
Welcome, Ms. Scholl. You have 33 minutes.
Thank you. I don't think I can follow the George Carlin quote, but I'm Jamie Scholl from Barclay Gardens. I support Amendment 1. I've lived in the city and county since I was 9 years old. I'd be called a bloomerang. I've lived on either coast and have gotten to know people in various walks of life. I think I'm just going to go through quickly as I can a few points. Home ownership for wealth generation, especially for low-income families, provide opportunities to build intergenerational wealth. I support Councilmember Smith's idea for using rescue funds for homeownership and amenities to support community centers stated in the comprehensive plan. I'm skeptical of the assumptions Ms. Scanlon has presented. There's an assumption of slow growth, that these would be owner occupied because ADU fills this need, and that there would be incremental change. We have no guarantees on that. Addressing the issue of buying up when a home is available on the current market, when something gets placed in there, there's a lot of times we will not know Sorry, my dog's drinking water.
No? Did we lose?
Oh, I'm sorry.
You muted yourself for a moment,
Yeah.
or you muted your dog, but go ahead.
Trying to mute him. So it's that going back and forth between market forces and government protecting our citizens and our neighborhoods. I'm concerned that this, if this does not pass, that this is an experiment that will be letting the genie out of the bottle that would be difficult to put back in 6 months or a year. That's not easy to do, as Mayor Allison had mentioned, if at all. I'm concerned about the investment bankers waiting for protections of the core neighborhoods to be let go. We had a professor mention this, dinner with investment bankers. That's definitely a concern. We are not against typically, homeowners or students or the lower income. We're for me, I'm concerned about the power being out of balance for our neighborhoods.
You have 30 seconds.
And okay. And that our communities need to have that kind of stability of home ownership. Sorry, trying to wrap up here. So I'd also like to ask that the city act post haste to create programs to support that middle range in all forms, to follow the comprehensive plan, to make it easy to access, and to reject this kind of deregulation by supporting Amendment 1. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Next up is Molly Stewart.
Hi,
Welcome.
thank you. I would like to ask everyone to think about what a real estate speculator is, and to think about how much homes in certain neighborhoods cost 20, 30 years ago, or even 15 or 5 years ago. There have been so many people on this call stating their home ownership status and their neighborhood status as if it gives them more justification that their opinion matters. But every homeowner is a real estate speculator. I own a home too. I say this about myself. We buy something not wanting the value to go down, but wanting it to go up. And people who've lived in these neighborhoods for 20 or 30 years are making a killing by keeping them the way that they are and not letting anyone else in who cannot afford to pay $500,000 for a home. I am on the board of the Bloomington Homeless Coalition, and we've been trying to get people into housing. And there are multiple people in the unhoused community who have income through Social Security and disability. And there are literally 0 units in this town that they can afford, even if they don't have any prior evictions, even if they don't have any criminal background. There's just nowhere for them to live. So if a neighborhood and the property value of someone who doesn't even have to pay their mortgage anymore because they've owned their house for so long, then I honestly don't want to live in this town anymore with these neighbors. This conversation has been disgusting, and thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comment. Who do we have next, Mr. Lucas?
Next up is J.A. Whitmer.
Hello, I am a longtime resident of Bloomington. I came here as a student. I wanted to live here, have my children here. I tried living in a duplex with my young children, Unfortunately, they were dealing drugs out the other side and had guns on the table. So duplexes, you don't exactly know who's going to be living next to you. I rented for many years. I represent not just myself, but for the 5 20-year-olds who are frequently at my house. Some live here, other bands practice here. They know that because I own this place, that we cannot be harassed, treated horribly by landlords as we have done, that I am not paying exorbitant rental rates as I was paying to live here. Home ownership is a better solution. I urge that the council think about the 20-year-olds. I want to own their own houses. You can't sell off the affordable housing stock to these real estate developers and have nothing for the people of this community. It's not a solution to affordability. I urge the passing of Amendment 1. I think this entire process has been extremely specious, occurring during a pandemic. No one can see our faces. As far as young people not being able to be on the computer late at night, every young person I know is on their phone probably right now. So that's not true. It's a burden on everyone to have to go through this all over again simply because some ideologues got themselves onto city council. I think that there's a real question here with the numbers of occupancy, many of which were self-reported by owners to the city and incorporated as if that was legitimate. I think there's a real question about people should be getting behind something that really makes affordable housing. The hospital is a lost opportunity. The hospital grounds, that should be an affordable housing neighborhood, not just a tiny partial of it. It's upsetting that people have been diverted and given this Ronald Reagan trickle-down economics BS plan for trickle-down housing. It's really going to make those neighborhoods exclusively high rent, white, out-of-town students. It's not about diversity, and it's not about stopping sprawl either, because those suburbs with their covenants are still being built, and the city isn't even trying to.
You have 30 seconds.
So I strongly wish that the people who think that this is going to get them off of couch surfing, wake up. This is not your solution. Get behind what is your solution. Go fight for that affordable housing. This is not it.
Thank you for your comments. We have 25 minutes remaining before midnight. I'd like to, without objection, go to 2 minutes per speaker. Anyone object? Okay.
Actually, I would. I think in order to be fair to the public, we've got to keep the rule consistent. And if we need to stop at midnight and continue at a later time, I would be more inclined to do that than just cut people off at this point in time. I think it's very important. Everyone has a fair amount of time in order to speak.
Councilmember Volin, did you want to respond?
Yeah, I want to agree with Councilmember Sandberg here.
Great, then let's proceed.
Well, but I mean, I want to ask about,
I don't want to burn time with us talking. I would like to hear from
but
the
I
public.
mean, how are we going to conduct future business? Like everybody should have the same amount of time, but those people who've already spoken tonight should not speak at the next meeting.
We will continue now, and those that didn't speak this evening, we're inviting them to Tuesday. Mr. Lucas, please proceed.
Next up is Eoban Binder.
Welcome.
Hey everyone, I'm Eoban Binder. I used to live in a duplex, but don't worry, I promise I'm not a drug dealer, although I'm sure a lot of people my age contemplate it these days when they see how expensive houses are. So anyway, we're all wondering exactly what impact duplexes are going to have, especially on affordability. And I think most of us intuit that the overall impact will be small on the system at large, and that's just because the scale of the housing supply problem is so huge. Even though a fair amount of housing has been built over the past few years, it just isn't enough. So even if we see dozens of duplexes start springing up in our neighborhoods, that's really a drop in the bucket. Anyway, so why don't we take a look at a different type of housing, though, that's been built recently, which is the affordable housing projects like, Crawford Apartments or the place at 3rd and Walker or the new housing down by Switchyard. And here's the question I would raise. I'm sure everyone here would say those projects were good, right? Like if we could go back in time we'd still want to build them. But here's the real sticker. Did those units improve housing affordability at large? Well, no, of course not. I mean, housing prices are still going up. So, you know, you could say, oh, well, they didn't make a difference. But here's what they did do. They made a huge difference for the people living in those units. The individual impact was incredible. You know, it was life-changing. And the same is true. Then you realize the same is true for any new housing unit that gets built, including duplexes. Any new housing unit you build where someone really wants to live, like in a walkable neighborhood, or, you know, near their work or school or friends, that's a wonderful thing for that person. And, you know, those are the people you are not hearing from tonight, the future citizens, the would-be residents of Bloomington's walkable neighborhoods. They are not here tonight. Instead, you know, by and large, you're hearing from predominantly older, mostly retired, established homeowners with huge amounts of financial equity in their properties. And of course, you know, the time to dedicate to coming along meetings like this. And, you know, that is not reflective of our overall community. So the fact of the matter is, if someone wants to live downtown, near downtown, we should encourage that by policy. I mean, more people living near downtown is an unequivocal benefit for Bloomington. More people being forced to live out in the county is not a benefit to the city. I also want to make a point about, you know, if council should do what's popular. I actually don't think so. I mean, some policies are unpopular, but they're still good policy. Taxes, parking meters, there's lots of unpopular stuff out there we still do because at the end of the day, it's a good idea. So council has to consider that balance of, you know, what some of its constituents say versus what the facts and the data and experts who've studied this stuff for years say, that our housing market is subject to supply and demand. So please vote against this amendment, and let's get back to making Bloomington better. The longer we try waiting for new solutions, the worse the problem's going to get. And thank you, Councilmember Sandberg, for letting me speak for 3 minutes.
Thank you. 2 points to make. One is that if the remaining speakers could speak as expeditiously as possible, that would be helpful. And number two, when we entertain the motion, keep in mind that there are a limited number of speakers left, and we may not have to go very late in order to conclude public comment, at least from the speakers who are here this evening. So let's proceed. Mr. Lucas.
Next up is Richard Lewis. And Mr. Lewis should be able to unmute.
Yes, hi, good evening. My name is Richard Lewis. I live in the Prospect Hill neighborhood. I thank the members of City Council for listening to our comments this evening. I would like to respond to my neighbor Aoban Binder about the Southern Knoll Apartments at 3rd and Walker, which I'm very proud of. Our neighborhood helped support that housing establishment that houses people with affordability issues, people with developmental and other disabilities, and people who have graduated out of homelessness. However, that was not a market rate development. The developer was experienced in pursuing federal and municipal grants. So it's another example of how the market itself does not necessarily create affordability. I would like to say that I support Amendment 1, and I hope that members of the council will approve it. I think that probably all of us in the Zoom meeting tonight are in favor of developing greater quantities of affordable housing with an emphasis on affordable home ownership. We have a lot more work to do in that area of housing for those at workforce salary levels and those at lower income levels. But I believe that plexes are the wrong tool to achieve these goals and will help neither affordability nor increased home ownership. Since there was discussion earlier tonight, I would like to remind people that state law prohibits local governments from enforcing owner occupancy in plexes. Again, we as the city of Bloomington cannot enforce owner occupancy of plexes, so we have no means to ensure that plexes will actually result in an increase of home ownership. And if we cannot enforce owner occupancy, then potential profit for developers points toward market rate rentals. At roughly $700 per bedroom times 6 bedrooms in a duplex, that's $4,200 per month in rental income, which far exceeds the income from 2 mortgages for the same duplex, quite likely 2 or 3 times greater. However, we do have ADUs and can enforce owner occupancy of those accessory dwelling units because at least one of the 2 units has to be owner occupied. It's a tool toward both ownership and affordability, but unfortunately we've only given those a few years to take off before the administration is already pursuing the Plex element. Rather than pursuing this aggressively top-down approach from the administration for the second time in only 2 years, the city could and should have engaged with the community at the beginning of this process, working from the ground up. We have many local experts in highly relevant fields who could contribute to a far more holistic discussion on our housing needs, and we could work towards shared goals and consensus in a far more collaborative environment. I thank the council sponsors of Amendment 1 for providing the accompanying concept plan, which lays out a variety of components to address our housing and growth needs. Please support Amendment 1, and thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comment.
Next up, and our next 5 speakers will be Betty Rose Nagel, Jean Lennon, Bess's iPad, Venley, and Barry Clapper. And I believe first up in that group is Betty Rose Nagel.
Welcome.
Hello. We've been talking about this. We've been debating for a while here, and I don't think, except for Susan Sandberg, we've heard about a very important adjunct of Amendment 1, namely the concept plan for growing diversity, housing diversity in Bloomington. Let me repeat that. Concept plan for growing housing diversity in Bloomington. The city council members have this in their legislative packet, but I would imagine that most of the rest of the people don't have any idea about it. What it is a draft by local architects, Jim Rosenbarger and Barry Clapper. It includes such things as form-based small-scale development. I suppose you could probably call those experiments, but not the kind of experiments that would blow up in your face. Small-scale developments, form-based. Also, encouragement and promotion of ADUs. Also, very important here, collaborative workshops involving all the stakeholders. So I'm sorry that no one else mentioned that. I don't know how many other people know about that, but to me, waiting here, wondering, wishing that there were some other way than a top-down, outside consultant approach, this seems like exactly what we need. And yet, except for the introduction of it, we've been here for a few hours and nobody has mentioned it. So with that, I will close and say, please vote for Amendment 1, and please keep in mind this concept plan that gives us another way of going forward, a better way, a way that would involve all of us and might possibly involve all of us in a way that could heal the wounds of the divisiveness that this whole upscale zoning has caused. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
Next up is Jean Lennon.
Welcome.
Hello, this is Jean Lennon. I've been listening to my neighbors and learning what I can, and I really thank the council for doing the same. I've been actively wanting to support the proposed changes to the UDO, yet I am still in the middle. So I'm asking you to exercise prudence and vote yes on Amendment 1. On the one hand, my neighbor's home is a grandfathered duplex in Bryan Park neighborhood, and under the current zoning, it's impossible for them to add an additional bedroom to their portion while maintaining the duplex. I feel my neighbor should be able to make these changes, or the ADU rule sizes should accommodate their situation. I wonder about grandfathered units and if they aren't being maintained and improved upon because of zoning restrictions and will ultimately be lost part of our housing stock. On the other hand, the introduction of plexes in the neighborhood, if left solely to market forces, will increase rental conversion pressure while not doing everything we can to meet all of our goals. I think there's untapped options for incentivizing ownership, affordability, and sustainability, for example, through tax abatement, that are worth doing. We can and should use all the tools we have to ensure our local resources remain in the community, lift up the citizens that need support the most while adding density near downtown and services. Please support Amendment 1. Thanks.
Thank you for your comment.
Next up is Bess's iPad.
Welcome. Please state your full name. Is Bess's iPad.
Okay, there we go.
There?
I'm sorry. I thought I had unmuted it. Hello.
Hello.
I'm Bess Lee, and boy, I want to talk about what I'm really feeling for the humanity of being together here with people. And this tonight, I really was trying to listen to the people that feel so cheated if they don't get the duplexes. I was the girl that broke down in tears. I know that you were moved. I was moved, and I was thinking, where is the disconnect happening? That people are really believing that if these duplexes are built with 3 and 3 occupants, with a possibility of a $6,000 income, $1,000 each, because it will be close to campus and will go to the highest bidder. There is something wrong here, that there are people that honestly believe that they're going to live in those duplexes and it's going to be affordable for someone who makes $30,000. My son works in restaurant work, has for about 3 years now. And he really knows the story, as so many of you all know, living with 3 people, trying to work 2 jobs to pay $1,700 a month, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And when I told him some of this, he burst out laughing. He said, who's going to lower rates if you don't have government do it? Okay, so I want to say, who has been misleading these people? I'm very upset about it, that they are heartbroken. And they are believing that they're going to get a duplex built that they can afford in Elm Heights. I think it's a terrible injustice that people have done to these people. They're going to be so disappointed either way. And this is my big disappointment. We have so many things we need to do in this town and in this world with climate change and racial injustice and economic situations. What would it have been like for the 100 hours we have put into this to be really looking for affordable solutions that are government supported? I want to thank Carrie Thompson for her incredible discussion of what could be done. I want to thank Ron Smith. Ron, I am 100% behind you. That money should go to poor people to get a home so they can start developing their own equity.
You have 30 seconds.
Okay, and I want us to, the people that know they've done this, stop manipulating people and turn us against each other, because we have got to get on board together. And I don't think anyone here tonight wants anything but affordable housing, but it's making certain people look like the devil, and it's not true. They're being misled, and it's very disturbing. And I am for Amendment 1. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you for the hard work you're doing. This is a bear. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
Next up, I believe Venley has indicated they will defer their comments to next week. So we have Barry Clapper, who should be able to unmute.
Hello.
Welcome, Ms. Clapper. Welcome.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Barry Clapper, and I live in Elm Heights. Thank you all for your work and for the opportunity to speak. I am asking you to vote yes on Amendment number 1. I believe that this particular ordinance is not ready. While there is wide agreement on the goals of affordability, inclusivity, and sustainability, there clearly is significant disagreement as to how to implement these goals. I think the main issue we've heard a lot about tonight is how this ordinance will do little more in historic neighborhoods, but create expensive market rate rentals. The entire goal of introducing diverse housing types is to provide more opportunities for people at different income levels. Duplexes double the development rights on what would be once a single family lot. Density has real value. This density should be used as leverage to get something that the community desires. It shouldn't just be given away. In this case, we should be finding ways to leverage density to create create more affordable living opportunities is to incentivize small scale, lower income development on a lot by lot basis in the way that we have created voluntary affordable housing incentives for larger multifamily developments. Rather than a broad application of plexes, as this current ordinance proposes, the comprehensive plan puts forward an alternate approach for achieving greater density and introducing diverse housing types through village centers. These are small scale commercial developments located at busy corners of transportation corridors that could provide walkable, lively destinations for nearby existing neighborhoods. Think the South Dunn Street development at Henderson and Hillside. Village centers can be the generator to create a range of multi-unit housing types. The land use map and the comp plan calls out for over 40 village center locations. Plexes are the intermediate housing forms that can transition between these smaller village centers to neighborhoods. The concept plan talks about this and a lot of other opportunities for neighborhood participation to work through solutions that are site specific and address the concerns and the sensitivities of different neighborhoods.
You have about 20 seconds remaining.
Thank you so much again for this opportunity, and please vote yes on Amendment 1. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Clapper, and thank you for the concept plan included. Who's up next, Mr. Lucas?
Mr. President?
Yes.
I'd like to move that at this point we draw the comment to a close and rise and report as a council committee of the whole.
Second.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded.
Is this debatable, Mr. Lucas?
It's not. So I will call on the council members as I see them. Councilmember Sandberg.
No.
Councilmember Volin.
Yes.
Councilmember Scambaluri.
Yes.
Councilmember Smith.
No.
Councilmember Piedmont Smith.
Yes.
Councilmember Flaherty.
Yes.
Councilmember Rosenbarger.
Yes.
And I vote no. The motion carries. So we will adjourn now. Is that what you're proposing?
Mr. President?
Yes.
Can we clarify when is the next scheduled meeting at which this will be taken up?
It will be taken up on Tuesday, I believe. I'm sorry. I did not call on on President Sims. President Sims, are you with us? All right. As President Sims mentioned, I believe, Mr. Lucas, that we take this up again at a special session on Tuesday evening. Is it at 6:30?
So I believe President Sims announced intention to schedule, sorry, can you hear me?
Yes.
I believe President Sims announced intention to call a special session beginning next Tuesday, May the 4th at 6:30 p.m. To pick up discussion of the UDO items from tonight.
I see. Okay, so we'll continue. Then, Councilmember Sandbeck, did you have a question?
Yes, I did. I just want to clarify for the public, we certainly appreciate everyone who's hung in there with us and spoken this evening for 3 minutes. Everyone who still has their hand up in tonight's Zoom meeting, I apologize that you're not going to get to speak. You've stayed up with us, but I would assume that we've taken a list of everyone who has already spoken. They won't get a second bite of the apple, but everyone whose hands are remaining will get first opportunity to speak at our special session on May 4th. Is that correct? And then anyone else from the public that may still want to speak at that point as well.
Yes. And I should say that, we would appreciate it if only those who hadn't spoken step up to speak at the next meeting. And Councilmember Volin, did you have a clarifying question?
Well, I just wanted to clarify. I mean, I'm looking at the list. I wanted to make sure that everyone whose hand is raised now ought to have priority to speak first when this subject comes back up at a special session.
Mr. Lucas, could you take a screenshot of the remaining speakers so that we have an idea?
I've kept a list of both the folks who have spoken as well as the hands that are still raised.
Very good. All right,
Okay,
so
thank
we
you.
have that information. Okay, if there's nothing else, that concludes our meeting this evening. President Sims?
No, I just, I don't know if I missed it, but I just want to remind the public that when we do resume public comment, we're still on amendment number 1.
Yes, and we'll continue public comment.
Okay.
So
thank you.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you all for your comments this evening.
Thank
and
you.
see you on Tuesday evening at 6:30.